people, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be needing.
This is an NBC News special report.
Good New Year's Day, everyone. I'm Kate Snow. We're coming on the air as we learn more about that deadly ramming attack in New Orleans that killed 10 people, left more than 30 injured.
I'm Morgan Radford. Just 1 hour from now, officials are set to give a news conference update, and police say that a man in a pickup truck intentionally sped down Bourbon Street in New Orleans early this morning at 3:15 a.m. local time, trying to run over as many victims, and was hell-bent, they said, on creating as much carnage as he could right as people were celebrating New Year's Day. We are told that suspect opened fire on police after crashing and shot 2 officers. In fact, take a look at this eyewitness video, which appears to show the exact moment that police approached the truck.
You hear what sounds like gunshots there. The FBI says the suspect is dead and that explosive devices were found in the area. Senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News they have now identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. They are trying to determine if he was also firing a long gun into the crowd while he was driving through the crowd. We're told the FBI is investigating all of this as an act of terrorism. Take a listen to this woman who witnessed the attack.
The guy in the pickup truck just punched the gas and mowed over the barricade and hit a pedicab passengers.
There were multiple cops on the corner.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos and very, very scary.
Chaos. We are hearing more chilling accounts from eyewitnesses just like that. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC's Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian, who joins us now from our D.C. bureau. Ken, we now have the suspect's name. What do we know about him, and do we know whether or not he acted alone?
Morgan, law enforcement officials are investigating that very question. They're not prepared to rule anything in or out. He's believed to be a U.S. citizen. Local officials have said he was wearing full military gear when he carried out this attack. As you mentioned, the FBI is investigating whether he fired a rifle at the crowd while he was driving and mowing people down in that pickup. We do know that the FBI and the police said he shot 2 New Orleans police officers who are in stable condition, and then he was shot by police after the truck crashed and he got out, having killed those 10 people and injured more than 30 others. Obviously, the FBI actively now investigating the motive here. One of the working hypotheses is that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. That has not been definitively established, but they are investigating whether a pole on the back of that truck with a black cloth affixed, whether that was in fact an ISIS flag. Again, no definitive answer on that, but they are looking into that, and they're looking into everything they can about this subject's background, his travel movements, his associations, his social media profile, all that to be determined, guys.
And Ken, I just want to highlight one of the things you said because it is new information. You said that he is believed to be a U.S. citizen. That's what you said, correct?
That's our information. I'm hedging it a little bit, but that we have been told that by U.S. officials. That's our information.
We don't know from where. We don't know if he's local or from another state.
That's correct. I did see that local officials in New Orleans have said that he was not a local resident. Obviously, the vehicle had Texas plates, but it's not clear that he was the owner of the vehicle. FBI is still trying to sort all that out.
And again, for our viewers, we are talking about 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. That is the identification we have currently from 3 officials with the FBI familiar with this matter. Ken, I want to go back to something else that was concerning to a lot of people. One of the data points that led officials to understand this to be a terrorist attack, and that was the potential for these homemade bombs, basically these IED devices. Do we know where that stands right now? We understand, again, from WDSU, our local affiliate there in New Orleans, that as a precautionary measure, they have had authorities now sort of scoping the area downtown around the Superdome. Do we know if they found any additional devices or what was found initially?
We do not, Morgan, and this is where the continued delays of these official briefings that we were promised really comes into play here, because you had the FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge this morning at the initial briefing on this matter tell the public that there were bombs, that there were IEDs potentially in and around that truck. But then we've heard nothing since then. And as you said, there's been reporting from local reporters that New Orleans police has been around checking suspicious packages, even conducting controlled detonations. But we don't know right now, that the authorities have not said whether there is an active threat, whether they believe there are other bombs in the city, whether there were any, in fact, in the truck, whether these were working bombs. These are all these are all big questions. But it does suggest, if there was anything resembling an IED, it suggests this was an extremely complex attack, unlike anything we've seen before. We've seen, as we've been talking about all day, we've seen, sadly, a number of these vehicle attacks, many ISIS-inspired, both in Europe and in New York City in 2017, that have killed a number of people. But we haven't seen a combination of a vehicle attack with someone using a gun and also deploying IEDs, if in fact that's what happened, guys.
I want to note that we're talking a lot about the suspect here because we don't yet have information on the 10 people who very unfortunately lost their lives this morning. I want to just mention that we're thinking about those families, obviously.
And the dozens more injured and taken to local area hospitals.
Right. More than 30 people in hospital, in a hospital. Ken, while we have you, though, what do we know about the white truck that authorities say was used in this attack? You mentioned that the white pipe with a black cloth on it. We can show that picture again. It kind of looks like a flagpole on the back of the bed of the truck. Do we know anything more about what they know about this vehicle?
I have to be a little careful here, Kate, but the working theory is that this was a rental truck. It's a white Ford F-150 with Texas plates, and they are investigating how that got in the hands of the suspect, who owned the truck, and whether the owner was the suspect or was someone else. And if it was someone else, did that person have any links to this incident, or was that person an unwitting person involved tangentially? So those are all questions the FBI is investigating, may have more information than they're willing to tell us right now. We're not reporting anything definitively about that, other than that the truck had Texas plates, potentially this flag, and they're investigating its provenance.
All right, our thanks to Ken Delaney. And Ken, you know, it's interesting, we also have a lot of reactions coming in now from Louisiana members of Congress, from Representative Steve Scalise, Representative Carter, of course, Speaker Mike Johnson from the 4th District of Louisiana, most offering their thoughts and their prayers to the victims, the people who were affected by this. Ken Delaney, and thanks so much for joining us now from D.C. We do want to stay in D.C. And go to our senior White House reporter, Gabe Gutierrez, who has been following this. He's actually currently in West Palm Beach. Gabe, this is interesting. Do we have any additional reporting on the president's plans? We know that we heard from President Biden as he was boarding a plane set to go, I believe, to Camp David.
Well, while President Biden was on that tarmac, Morgan, he did say that he would have more to say on this in just a short while, presumably waiting for federal authorities to give the public that updated briefing. But yes, as you said, President Biden spent the night, rung in the new year in Wilmington, Delaware, after attending a private wedding last night. Throughout the morning, he has been continuously briefed by senior FBI and Homeland Security officials. He did speak by phone with the mayor of New Orleans, offering full federal support. And he briefly spoke with reporters as he boarded Air Force One en route to Camp David. Let's listen.
You've all got my statement. I'll have more to say in the next hour or so following what's going on in New Orleans. I'll be happy to do that.
Do you understand if the person crossed the border?
I'm not going to comment on any specific at all. I've contacted every agency in the federal government as well as the state. They're all coordinating to get to the bare facts. We know what the facts are.
Can you say if he was a foreigner or if he was a domestic?
I'm not going to say anything until I get all the facts in front of me.
Has the suspect been identified? Has the suspect been identified?
Again, I'm not going to comment until I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened?
Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
President Biden saying that his reaction was one of anger and frustration. And Morgan and Kate, you heard President Biden there declining to answer many questions from reporters about the origins of this suspect. Of course, the president waiting for this investigation to play out. And again, we do expect to potentially hear more from him. As he said in that brief interaction with reporters, he'll be at Camp David later today. Now, also, we're here in Palm Beach County, Florida. This is where the president-elect spent the night. He rung in the new year at his Mar-a-Lago estate. We heard from for the first time from President-elect Trump also this morning on a posting on social media. He said, in part, our hearts are with all the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. So again, those are the first comments from President-elect Trump, and we are waiting to see if President Biden might speak once again. So far, though, the White House says there have been no changes to his schedule, although he is continuously being briefed on the investigation after speaking with the mayor of New Orleans this morning.
Well, should he continue to make more remarks, we will certainly bring them to you live. Gabe Gutierrez reporting live there from West Palm Beach, Florida. Thank you, Gabe.
And we should probably mention that we are awaiting a press conference. It's been delayed several times. The latest we have is that it may begin about 50 minutes from now. And certainly we will bring that to you as soon as it happens. Let's get to NBC's Jesse Kirsch, who is in New Orleans for us. Jesse, I know you just arrived this morning from Atlanta, so you're outside the Superdome, where the Sugar Bowl will take place in a matter of hours tonight. That's Notre Dame versus Georgia. A lot of people in town for that game. What is security like there?
Yeah, and I want to put that game into context for people who aren't big sports fans, Kate. This is part of the college football playoffs. So these are the top teams in the country. They're competing for a chance to play in the national title game. So if you compare this to pro football, this is the playoffs, right? It's in the name. So this is going to have a lot of eyeballs watching this at home as well as in person here tonight. And so far, this game is still proceeding, and we are trying to get some clarity from officials at this press conference. One of the things to ask them is what gives them the confidence to know that their plans are solid around something like this in light of what has happened. So that's something we'll be looking at. I want to show you what the security is like out here right now. And again, we are still hours away from kickoff. So what we're seeing right now may change. But right now you can see we've got some barricades like this, which are, I don't know what exact material this is, but this is the kind of thing that you would imagine is quite solid and would hopefully hold up well against vehicles. But you also have behind that some metal fencing. But I'm going to have our producer Charlie's backpedaling with me here. We've got metal fencing here. Those kinds of barricades don't extend all the way down the block. And if he just comes over here with me, you can see behind me here, this is an open curb. And there are certainly plenty of law enforcement personnel out here. I don't know if this street's going to be blocked off. I don't know how those plans are changing in light of what has happened at this point, just pointing out what we're looking at now, and we'll be keeping an eye on how that evolves over the hours ahead. This is a game, as you mentioned, Notre Dame and Georgia. I was on a plane full of Bulldog fans coming from Atlanta this morning. So you have a lot of people who are coming in to this city tonight. So, you know, you're expanding the volume potentially of people in New Orleans right after a security incident that you would imagine is being reviewed right now and is certainly under a lot of scrutiny. And, you know, if you've been to any major event in recent years, this is going to look familiar to you. You've got the security check over here. Appears to be the metal detectors that you would go through at an arena. And they've got the barricading around that. But again, this kind of harder barricading that we're seeing over here does not extend all the way down the block. And that's something that we'll be looking to see how that changes in the hours ahead. And we should also note we are less than 2 months away from the Super Bowl, of course, a global event, and that is also being hosted here in New Orleans. And so that security incident, or that security event, I should say, is something that you can imagine is also going to be getting a lot of renewed scrutiny in the run-up to that. We always look at the security around a Super Bowl, especially in terms of in light of events around the globe. But you got to imagine that that's going to get more attention now because of what has unfolded in this city in the last 12 hours or so. And we have heard from the NFL. They say that the planning process around that goes on for 2 years. They've been planning that for about 2 years to ensure the safety of people who are attending that. But, you know, that's another thing that we'll be asking officials about today, is if they are prepared or they feel prepared or feel they need to make changes here in light of what has happened overnight. And again, we're not talking about an area that is a stranger to crowds. Bourbon Street is known as a place for nightlife, a place people are moving about in the street as well late at night. And so the idea that this could happen, especially on a higher profile night, is something that I think has a lot of us scratching our heads right now, myself included. Send it back to you.
Yeah, Jesse, it's interesting, hearing you talk about the infrastructure, because there's also just the question of the people, right, and the psychological effect that this has really taken on that community. Because earlier, just before about 8 a.m. Eastern time, we heard Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick basically say, look, we understand this event happened, but we also know that people are coming to the city because they're excited. They want to see the Sugar Bowl, and we are prepared to welcome them. So they were really trying to sort of calm the community's fears. But as they were saying that, we're getting more and more images coming in from eyewitnesses. I want to roll a few of those for our viewers right now, if we can, in our control room. Pull up some of the user-generated content, videos and images like this that were taken from people who were there in the moments that this unfolded, people who saw that white truck. Here you can see where we have blurred bodies that were laid on the ground. You can see where people were rushing to render aid. Other times you can see bystanders standing by who are literally stuck in place. Emergency responders trying to pull them away from staring at bodies in what appear to be a state of shock there on the ground. And so these are the types of images we're seeing now come out, Jesse. In the time that you have had, to be on the plane and talk to people who were headed there for the Sugar Bowl, you mentioned the conversations you were having in the car headed to your reporting site. What are people telling you about the pall that has sort of fallen over the city, about the reaction now in these hours leading up to the Sugar Bowl?
What I can tell you, Morgan, is when I got to the airport this morning, filled with people wearing their Bulldog red gear for the game tonight in Atlanta, and not everyone knew what had happened here. I actually had asked someone right through security, said, oh, did you see what had happened in New Orleans? And she had not heard the news, so I broke the news to her. And, it changes, right, your perspective when you're coming to a place that's supposed to be filled with revelry, and now you've got this somberness hanging over this community as well right now. So I think it's going to be really interesting as we hear from people, as more people come to the area for the game. And actually, you can see right behind me, that's one of the Georgia team trucks. So, if you've ever been to a major football game, I know college football fans are absolutely, passionate about their teams and often come over to the stadiums earlier. So as we start to see people, we'll ask them what they make of this, how they feel about coming to this. And of course, there have been other, incidents in the past that probably stick in people's minds when they come to major events, right? Developments over the years, like the addition of metal detector checks and barricades on what are referred to as soft targets. We talk about arenas, right, and events with people in terms of what kind of target they are now. So our society has changed over the years, but it's hard to imagine when you're coming for something on the same day as all this has unfolded. And again, going back to what you said about that press conference earlier, officials were pretty adamant about the fact that things are moving forward here at that press conference. And I think one of the outstanding questions, because they did not take questions at that press conference, that we'll hopefully be able to ask of them soon, is what gives them that confidence in light of what happened overnight.
Jesse Kirsch for us. Jesse, really appreciate you being there, and we'll let you go do some more reporting. We'll check back with you. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and bring in former ATF Special Agent in Charge, Jim Cavanaugh, who joins us now. Jim, you have just been really strategic in helping us understand these types of events for years. What do we think at this hour, at this moment, is going on behind the scenes as we await this, further update from officials? What is the most time-sensitive data that they're looking at right now?
The connections of the killer. That's the most sensitive, because you want to stop if there's any other attacks afoot, whether in New Orleans or even in another city. So that's the crucial facts for the commanders. They've got to see if there's anything else in the planning and try to make sure they can interrupt or stop it. The crime scene will go on. That's going to be a slow process, and there's no hurry. I mean, the killer is dead, so there's not going to be a prosecution against him anyway. There's no hurry there. They've got the resources to take care of that. Once they render any suspected IEDs safe, that's a static scene. But the commanders are faced with, the connections of this guy. If he is a person who's connected to foreign terrorism, we're not sure of that. They haven't said that explicitly, but there's certainly implications of that. As Ken was reporting. So we're not sure, but it seems like implications of that from all the facts we've seen, if he's a member of a foreign terrorist group or connected or inspired by one, then our intelligence agencies and the FBI, they want to get ahead of that. You know, who is he? Who works with him? Who was his confederates or co-conspirators, or who is he in touch with on the internet? Who could be launching a like-minded attack in another city or right behind him, or were any bodies left in his wake that we don't know about just yet? So that's a biggest thing on their plate for the commanders of law enforcement, but also is the security at the Sugar Bowl. And that's on their plate as well. So they are faced with making sure that that's as tight as they can be, and they're going to have on their hands a skeptical public and a skeptical traveling public that can look at the events this morning and say, you know, geez, I hope I'm going to be safe there because I've seen how this unfolded. So I think the fans will still come, and I'm sure they'll have a memorial service at the halftime or whatever and be very respectful. But fans are not, the public is not stupid. They're going to watch this closely. So the law enforcement has to be on their game here and communicate directly and responsibly with the public who's going to the game and the citizens of New Orleans and America writ large about what happened today.
Jim, you mentioned online presence of the suspect. How does that digital footprint get looked at in these early hours? How quickly can they, in this day and age, how quickly can they track someone's connections?
Well, you know, really quickly. I mean, the FBI has a great cyber unit, and if it goes into foreign connections, we have, CIA and NSA and DIA, and, even our military intelligence capabilities. We have lots of capabilities to track digital footprints. Now, these guys can use encrypted apps and encrypted websites that can somewhat slow that down. And that's been a problem. But, sometimes they're just not that slick. And, we might be able to glean some real close information from them. And if they're an actual member of a foreign terrorist group, whatever that level that means, a made guy, so to speak, or are they an inspired actor? The results are the same, agony, misery, and death. And they're trying to impress their community, which is the community of terrorists and hate mongers. They don't care about America or the public or what the world thinks of them. They only care about what their group thinks of them. And their group makes them a hero for, going in and dying in an attack like this. So we just have to see. Is it really connected to a group? We just have to see. I'd say that post with the possible flag is something that's could be a real tell here. Somebody waving their motive in our face as they attack America. That's certainly possible.
Well, on that note, we thank you, Jim Kavanaugh. We do have some new reporting coming in on that exact thing. So let's bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. He's been reporting all morning on this. Tom, I see your new note, but I'll let you tell us what you know about. You're learning much more about the suspect.
We sure are, and I'm going to fold in the reporting of my colleagues Julia Ainsley and Ken Delaney in here. First off, from an investigation standpoint, there is an active effort right now to investigate a potential improvised explosive device, so a homemade explosive device in plain English, found inside that individual's vehicle. There are at least 2 other potential, again, not confirmed, potential improvised explosive devices that were planted in the area. They're trying to determine, are those actual explosives? Could they have gone off? And are they tied to this particular individual? So they're looking at that as well. It's our understanding that this person had on his person a long gun as well as potentially another weapon. And the FBI now says on the record that this 42-year-old identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, and the FBI has now identified him publicly, says that he's a U.S. citizen from Texas, that an ISIS flag was located, and I'm quoting now, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Now, that ISIS flag that they say was located in the vehicle is believed to be affixed to the hitch on the tailgate. So if you look at this photo and you look at where the license plate is, it's a Texas license plate on the back of it, there's a white pole that kind of comes up there, and there's a black material, some sort of potentially a flag, a garment, whatever it is, that might be, in fact, the flag that was there. So that's something that they're looking at, Kate. In addition, we're told that they're looking into this vehicle and where they got it from, but there's no indication at this point that the person who rented this vehicle, which may have been through an application, so there's kind of like an Airbnb for cars, that this individual rented out the car but may not have known this person's intentions. That's something that law enforcement will continue to look into. But again, the headlines here, the FBI now formally confirming the information that we broke several hours ago, that Shamsuddin Jabbar is in fact the person they believe is responsible for this deadly truck attack. We are told that shortly we will be from multiple senior law enforcement officials, we'll hear that the death toll has risen, that this individual is a citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, and that that truck had an ISIS flag that was found in it. And that's what the FBI is investigating at this standpoint, from this at this hour, I should say, that multiple special agent bomb technicians from the FBI and other local law enforcement agencies. In this particular case, it would be the Louisiana State Police, the New Orleans Police Department, but typically the Louisiana State Police has a pretty robust presence on this. They'll take a look at some other devices, which we are reporting, according to 3 law enforcement officials briefed on the matter, at least 2 other devices that were planted in the vicinity that is obviously of high interest. This really changes a bit the security picture here, because if other devices were planted where they planted elsewhere in New Orleans, and obviously we're all acutely aware of the event that is happening tonight in that city, the Sugar Bowl, and what does it mean for that event? So a lot of questions here, Kate and Morgan, but I'll kind of send it back to you for any questions you might have as we continue to do our reporting and pour through this.
Tom, first off, excellent reporting, because for our viewers who are just turning in, you gave us 4 really big new nuggets that really changed the landscape of what we've been seeing. You talked about the flag, ISIS flag. 2 potential IEDs. 3, more details from the suspect. We now know he's 42-year-old U.S.-born citizen born in Texas. And 4, you mentioned that the death toll was expected to rise. On that note, Tom, and I want to go back to that flag that we're looking at here, you know, attached to the hitch of the bed of that truck there. That was really striking to me, because I also saw when looked at that photo, those 4 holes in the windshield, the back windshield there, that appear to be, you know, gunshot bullet holes that may have entered the vehicle. When you see that flag, does that give us any indication about whether or not he was working alone, or if he had known associates? And 2, Tom, do we have any, now that we have this name, do we have any indication of whether or not he'd had previous arrests, misdemeanors, felonies, anything in his record?
That's something that we're still pouring through with respect to what is referred to in law enforcement circles as suspect pedigree. Where do they come from? What's their date of birth? Do they have any active lawsuits for or against them? Do they have any sort of criminal history? That's information that we're still in the process of going through, and we'd like to do a lot of verification to get to that point. You're seeing a video of the immediate aftermath. There were, according to a video I think that we're hopefully going to be able to show folks shortly, that's just been forwarded to me from our affiliate in New Orleans. Basically, this stops, and then there's a quick pause or 2, and then a tremendous exchange of gunfire. So the bullet holes that you're seeing on the back of that car could have come from police. They could have come from police firing from the front to the back. They could have been, it's just the picture's not clear enough, could have been shots fired from the back to the front. We are told that investigators are looking into whether or not he was firing as he was driving this vehicle, that he may have been firing a gun while driving the vehicle. That's something they're looking into. We don't have that confirmed. That's going to require, obviously, a lot of work from an evidence standpoint. Clearly, some of that probably based off of eyewitnesses. We'll see if that turns out to be true, but they're at least looking into it. This idea, by the way, of flying an ISIS flag on the back of a pickup truck is something that we've seen before. Seyfulo Saipov, back in October of 2017 on Halloween, drove down the Upper West Side Highway here in New York City and conducted a terrorist attack in the name of ISIS, killing 8, injuring over a dozen. He had talked about, according to court records, the idea of actually flying an ISIS flag from the back of his truck, coincidentally also a rented pickup truck, that from a major retailer. But he talked about doing that, but thought it would attract too much attention and that the NYPD would see that and immediately try to stop him. Obviously, that's something that would certainly grab the attention of law enforcement, frankly, anybody. That flag is kind of ubiquitous in our society. So that is something that we've seen, talked about before, and that is something, obviously, that is of interest. The idea of driving through a crowd in vehicle ramming attacks is something that we've seen over the last decade. It's talked about in almost every single major propaganda that comes out from various terrorist organizations. And as we recently reported on NBC News Now, and a story I believe we talked about was the idea of how terrorist organizations are now using AI to produce terrorist propaganda because it allows them to be anonymous. You have the face and the voice of it being a computer somewhere instead of being an actual person, makes it more difficult for investigators to try to determine who is behind that propaganda. So this is an evolving landscape, a reminder that as we've been reporting here at NBC News for the past 9 months, the FBI has been especially concerned about the volume of terrorism investigations and attacks and thwarted attacks. There's been a number of them. The Taylor Swift concert in Austria, the FBI and the U.S. is warning to Russian security agencies about what turned out to be a deadly attack at the Crocus concert hall there. There were several other investigations, including an election day plot here in the United States that was disrupted, and a plot involving a relative of that suspect in France that was disrupted, as well as a number of potential incidents, not all necessarily tied to terrorism, that were thwarted before the Olympics. It's been an incredibly busy year in this landscape. It is at a tempo that we have not seen before, at least not since 2014, based on the officials that work in this space that I talked to. And so this is very real and has been a real, genuine threat here, I would say, for the past year of this exact type of incident. The big question going forward is, how was it possible, knowing that all the information I just shared with you is information that was public prior to this event, how was it possible that a truck was able to drive down Bourbon Street in the early morning hours on New Year's Eve, when obviously there would be a lot of people out? There are a lot of people out in that street on a Tuesday in August, let alone at this time of the year. And as we saw here in New York City last night, it would not have been possible for this attack to take place. They fill up sanitation trucks with sand, and good luck to anybody trying to get through that. So obviously serious questions will need to be asked of New Orleans authorities. Was it an issue with overtime, and did politicians not allow those type of protections go in? Was it a failure on the police department? Was it a combination of things, like it usually is? Time will tell. Yeah. Tom, before we let you go, can I just ask one question about the victims in all this, the people who've died, the people who are still hurt and in hospitals? Because you said when we came to you that the death toll has risen, which is the worst news we could imagine. Is this because many of the injuries are very severe and we're finding out that they're passing away at the hospital? That's exactly right. The injuries here were horrific in nature, we're told. I don't think I need, out of respect to the victims, to get into specific details that we've been told and hearing, but we do expect the next time that we get a briefing from city officials for that death toll to rise. It's not because of any lack of extreme effort by the medical community. It's just injuries are injuries, and when you're hit with a truck at that high rate of speed, and if this idea that he was in fact firing out of the truck at that time, obviously that would have added additional problems for the people that were in that crowd. Is something that law enforcement's tracking down. It's horrific, it's horrible, and obviously is going to be continued sad news, not only for the New Orleans community, but given the fact this attracts people from all over the country, we'll have to wait and see if other communities are impacted as well. Yeah, keeping all those families in our thoughts here too. Tom Winter for us. Tom, thank you for all the reporting.
It is just after 1:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and this is what we know thus far about that deadly truck ramming attack in New Orleans that killed at least 10 people and left more than 30 others injured. We are learning more also right now about that suspect.
Yeah, if you're just joining us now, senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News that the suspect has been identified. He is 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar, who is now deceased. The FBI just confirming moments ago that he is a U.S. citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck that appears to have been rented, and that an ISIS flag was found on that vehicle that rammed into the Bourbon Street crowd. You see it there in the picture on the back of the tailgate. The FBI says they are working to understand whether the suspect had any associations with terrorist organizations.
Now, in half an hour, officials are set to update us on the investigation at a news press conference. Police have previously said that the suspect intentionally carried out this attack and tried to run over as many victims as he could. Police saying he was hell-bent on creating carnage. We are told that he allegedly opened fire on police and shot 2 officers after he crashed into that crowd.
Police are also trying to determine if he was firing a long gun into the crowd while he was running people over. We're told the FBI is investigating this, and we've said this again and again, as an act of terrorism.
Our NBC affiliate WDSU spoke to 2 eyewitnesses who said that they saw the moment the pickup truck plowed into a crowd of pedestrians. Take a listen to what they said.
We were coming through the intersection, and it all just happened so quickly. But the guy in the pickup truck just punched the gas and mowed over the barricade and hit a pedicab passengers.
There were multiple cops on the corner.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos and very, very scary.
When you saw the car, did you think anything of it at first, or did you?
No, no. It was the most bizarre thing, like something that the least expected thing. I don't even know how he managed to maneuver that with the amount of traffic and people that were still out.
Bumper to bumper. There were people everywhere.
Yeah, there was a lot of people.
Tons of people.
Tons of people. And cops everywhere.
There were cops
everywhere.
The barricade. They were standing right there when it happened.
And when you're talking about barricade, are you talking about like those like the metal poles right there?
Yep.
So did you see at all any of the ballards or anything like that pop up?
It was just like debris and everything, and then people. It was unreal. Just total chaos. Total chaos.
What was it? The sounds?
A huge impact. It almost sounded like a gunshot. I actually looked, and maybe we did hear that too, knowing now that the guy had ended up shooting those 2 police officers. But I remember the screeching and him gunning the car and the impact and the screams. Like I said, the screams of those girls. Yeah, I don't know that I'll be able to forget that.
I'm so sorry you guys had to go through that. You had mentioned inside that when he barricaded through, it was super loud.
Yeah, it was. It was very, very loud. It just was this huge boom.
Crunching and
crunch. Yeah. And then just the people yelling.
And you guys had just walked right across the street. Where were you guys at?
We had come from about 2 blocks down from a parking garage, the Roosevelt parking garage, and we're coming through this intersection right here on Bourbon when it happened.
From what I recall, he was in this lane and just took a hard right and punched it, is what it seemed to be like. So I don't know how he did it, because there were all the cars. It was literally 3 3 or 4. I mean, it's 3 lane, but there was also people parked over on the side. So, I mean, it was just hectic and chaotic. I don't know how he was able to get through the barricade or whatever, get enough speed.
And there is multiple pedicab drivers and carts there. And fortunately, one of the girls that he hit her cart, she didn't have passengers, but it was the other gentleman who had passengers. That's what he hit, and they were just all on the ground. I mean,
I was just going to say, so you guys saw this happen. What did you guys do next?
It was kind of like a surreal moment, and my husband, he just grabbed me and he was like, let's go, let's go, get out, let's get out of here. It was so surreal, I think we did kind of go into that fight or flight mode and chose flight in that instance, to get ourselves out of here and safe.
Oh, just devastating to hear these accounts that we're getting. Let's bring in Tim Gallagher, former FBI special agent in charge of the Newark, New Jersey office, is with us now. Tim, the FBI got involved very early on. We heard about this, in the early mornings this morning. It's being investigated as a terror attack. What key pieces of evidence are you focused on? We've got some new reporting that I don't know if you heard from Tom Winter just a short time ago. Were you able to hear that? And can you talk about what, if you were in charge at this moment, what you'd be focused on?
Yes, thanks for having me. I heard what Tom had to say before, those key pieces of evidence. Obviously, the indicator of ISIS involvement from the flag, you can be drilling down on, who has he been associated with, but, the name itself, that's the key piece of evidence here. We're looking to see, build out his network. Who is he in contact with domestically? Who is he in contact with internationally? Potentially, are there other plots afoot out there that he may have been a part of? That's job one. Looking to nail down, is there anything else out there plot-wise that needs to be disrupted and disrupted immediately? Getting legal process for all of his devices, for all of his accounts, looking to see who he was communicating with, who was funding him. These are all things that the FBI is doing with their partners as we speak.
It's interesting, Tim. I'm listening to the things you're describing, and it's what, we heard Tom's describe earlier as criminal pedigree, right? Sort of, we were talking about, were there any past criminal activities or misdemeanors, felonies, arrests perhaps in this person's profile? When you talk about the things that you collect, what is unique about what you collect from the digital footprint that is different from the physical evidence that investigators will be collecting on the scene?
Sure, yeah, from the digital footprint of his, you're looking to see what sites has he been going to, what was he looking to purchase, was he doing surveillance online as to Bourbon Street, or was he going in person down there? Maybe his devices would tell you that his cell phone was pinging in that area a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the things that you'd be looking for, but you're drilling down to see, obviously there's surveillance done. He just didn't wake up and decide, I'm going to go launch this attack on Bourbon Street. There was research done in advance, and how was he doing that, and how did he know that this particular spot, could be vulnerable in the situation for what we're hearing about the bollards?
Should we be paying close attention? I assume law enforcement will be paying close attention to what Tom reported about IEDs, improvised explosive devices. I think Tom said there may have been one inside the truck, and then he mentioned potentially a couple more. How would you be handling that?
Right. Yeah. It's one thing that you have IEDs. It's another thing where they were. Right. So what's in his vehicle? Obviously, that ties directly to him. But if they found other suspicious packages, which may in fact be IEDs, are you looking to pull every piece of camera footage that you can to see, where was that? When was that item left? Who left it there? Can we identify who left it there? Was it a bag? Or was it an actual potential device? Because that's a key piece of evidence here. Was it isolated to the vehicle, to the small on fire, into that IED, or was there placement in advance? Or would there be other people? And is there a continuing danger to public safety in New Orleans as we speak?
Speaking of that public safety, Tim, I mean, the Sugar Bowl is still expected to take place tonight. We heard the superintendent basically assure people that the city was prepared for this event, still welcoming people to her city. But, you know, from all the experience you have, if this were your family sitting there in New Orleans, preparing to go to a game like this, what would you advise? What can people take from this, and what can they do in sort of preparation for the hours that are coming, the hours ahead?
Right. You know, don't panic. If you see something, say something. You know, you constantly hear that, but, you know, this is going to be one of the safest places on the planet tonight. That facility itself, the Sugar Bowl. But like when we talk about the perimeter, the outer perimeter, there could be some potential soft targets out there that if there is a continuing threat to public safety, you know, that could be targets. So that's where if you're out there, if you see something that doesn't look right, obviously report it to law enforcement and do so immediately.
All right. Our thanks to Tim. We appreciate your analysis and your spending your time with us on this very busy day.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Let's bring in NBC News law enforcement analyst and former chief of police of the Seattle Police Department, Carmen Best, is with us. Carmen, we speak often, unfortunately, when there's a disaster, right? When something horrific like this happens. We were just talking with our previous guest about tonight. Given your experience as a chief of police, what is that police department in New Orleans doing right now?
Well, I have to say, Kate, that I agree with Tim wholeheartedly that it's probably going to be one of the safest venues in the city of New Orleans this evening, considering what happened over the course of the last day. There will be increased officer presence, increased vigilance at all of the stations. As many cars will be out, many police cars. They'll be working with the federal partners as well to have increased personnel on the street, reviewing all of their plans, making sure they reinforce any potentially softer targets, and making sure that it is absolutely as safe as possible. I know their chief and the superintendent, that is, Ann Kirkpatrick. She's a well-experienced police chief, has been through other types of significant events, and she will make sure that everyone, all hands on deck.
And what about other cities, Chief Best? I mean, what should people who are watching this, who aren't in New Orleans, who aren't from New Orleans, but who are watching this, anticipating all the other New Year's Day celebrations that are happening across the country, what should they take from this? What should they do in preparation? What should they be aware of?
Well, I can assure you, every time something like this happens, even though all the precautions are being taken in advance, when something like this happens, everyone goes over their plans again. They start maybe upping some of their resources at certain sites. They're worried about copycats and people who may try to simulate or redo an event like this. So all of that affects everyone in law enforcement, and they're asking the public. They use crowdsourcing. They ask the public to stay alert. As was said earlier, if you see something, say something. Nothing is too small or insignificant to report when we're trying to keep everyone safe.
All right, Carmen Best, really great to have your expertise with us. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let's go now to NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, who has been following all of these developments for us from the moment that they broke. Tom, you've been working your sources. You had several updates for us just in the past hour, but specifically, I wanted to ask about those potential IEDs. You mentioned there was 2. Did you say there was a possible 3rd, perhaps located in or near that white truck allegedly belonging to the suspect?
Yeah, so our reporting on this is, one, the FBI is out with a statement saying, look, we found weapons in a possible IED in the vehicle. So what does that actually mean? So we've seen this a couple of times at incidents this year and in many other incidents in the past. Somebody might have something in their truck of fuel mixed with something else and wires coming out of it. And ultimately, when the FBI reviews it, they're like, there's no way this could have gone off, but maybe this person believed that it could have been an explosive device. On the other hand, as we saw with the Boston Marathon bombing attack, that those 2 individuals, the Tsarnaev brothers, Tamerlan and Zohar Tsarnaev, they actually did have active and usable pipe bombs and other explosive devices with them that they actually used, particularly in their shootout with police officers initially from the Watertown Police Departments, and then Watertown Police Department in Massachusetts, and then other law enforcement agencies. So they want to make sure there's 3 concerns. One, first off, you don't want anybody else to get hurt. 2, you've got to find a way to render that device safe if you think it could explode. And 3, you need to find a way to actually secure the evidence. So, for instance, here in New York City, we had a couple of bombing attacks that go back several years. One was in Chelsea. There was a bombing in New Jersey at a road race, and then there was a bombing in Chelsea. There was a third device that was found. And what the NYPD did is they put that inside a pressurized containment vessel. That's something that they can actually tow to the scene, and a lot of law enforcement agencies, major ones, have these. They can put whatever suspected device they think exists into that, seal it, and then take it to a facility where they can do a controlled detonation. And if it goes off along the way, it's all contained within that vehicle. But most importantly, Morgan, it's contained in the vehicle from an evidence standpoint. So it's contained within that vessel, and they have all of the parts. And so maybe there's a fingerprint, maybe there's a piece of DNA or a component, a particular component that would lead investigators along the right path. Now, in this particular instance, they're not looking for anybody because the person that they might be looking for is dead on the street in New Orleans. We've seen photographs of that. So that's not what they're looking for. But did this individual have any help? And they haven't said one way or the other whether they're looking for anybody, at least publicly at this point. So they want to see, did somebody else help make these devices? Should we be looking for another person? And then particularly in light of the security situation that you were just talking to Tim about, that's something that they would want to find out. So that's a little bit of what is going on here. You're looking at some of the video, unfortunately, of the aftermath of this incident. But that's one of the things that they're looking for. Then to further answer your question, there are at least two other potential IEDs that they're looking for. I put an asterisk on this because, as you can imagine, you're looking at the chaos that occurred after this happened. What would you do if you were there? You would drop your bag, you would just run. You want to get out of there as fast as possible. So did somebody leave behind a cooler? Did they leave behind a backpack? And they're going to have to look at those. Sometimes they go through that very quickly at great personal risk to the bomb squad of whatever city it might be in. Once you've stopped this incident, you might want to take your time. And again, it goes back to also collecting evidence. So that's what's going on there.
And Tom, just to go back to what you reported a short time ago, you reported that this is a U.S. citizen. The suspect is a U.S. citizen born in Texas. Do we have any more information about what part of Texas, where he might be from, whether he has any criminal record, anything like that?
Still going through the background of this individual, Shamsuddin Jabbar from Texas. He's 42 years old, born in late October 1982. This individual, their background, we're going through that right now. Any recent travel, that's something that federal law enforcement agencies are actively working on. We can report that, and we'll take a look into that. I want to be clear on something. It has been reported that this individual passed through a border location several days ago. We are being told that that information is not accurate, but we're continuing to do reporting on it. I just want folks to, you might be seeing something on Twitter, and then what is this guy talking about? And so I just wanted to kind of see if we could square those two things. At the moment, we're not being told that this individual had any recent southern border crossings in the last several days, but that I want to remind people that this vehicle is not a vehicle that he owns. It's owned by another person that was apparently put on an online car service where you can rent out your car, kind of like an Airbnb for cars. And so if that's the case, it's possible this vehicle did recently transit the southern border with Mexico, but it may not have been that this person, the person responsible for this attack, was inside of it. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity. But I'll tell you that this is all very fluid and has been moving throughout the day.
No, for sure. And Tom, it might be worth mentioning that all of us at NBC News take great pride in the way that we report facts and the way that we try to verify things and explain exactly. We're transparent about what we know and what we don't know, and that's what Tom has just presented. Tom, thank you so much.
Meanwhile, as federal law enforcement investigates that New Orleans attack, President Biden is offering his condolences to the victims as well as their families. In fact, he told reporters just earlier today that he is being continually briefed. However, he is not offering any new details about the investigation at this point. NBC News White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is following everything for us from West Palm Beach, Florida, right there near Mar-a-Lago. Gabe, this is interesting because we heard from the president when, of course, reporters were sort of initially getting inklings of what was happening before we officially were reporting the suspect's name. There was lots of questions about who he was, where he was from, was in fact he a domestic. We know that now he was born in Texas. What has the president said in terms of his plans in reacting to this incident for the rest of the day?
Well, Morgan, he said that his reaction was one of anger and frustration. But what you described is something that happens in many instances like this, where that information is so fluid, as Tom was describing. The White House and the president are very cautious about what information they release early on in the investigation. They don't want to get in the way of local, state, and federal authorities. So the president declined to comment on details of the suspect's origin. He was asked repeatedly about that. But one thing that the president did say is that he would have more to say, and that he wanted to say more, but he was waiting on authorities to give out more information. So at that point, we presumably do expect to hear from him at some point later today. He started the day in Wilmington, Delaware. That's where he rung in the new year. And then he did travel to Camp David. And as we heard from the White House, he has been briefed continually throughout the day by senior FBI and Department of Homeland Security officials. Also this morning, we understand that the president did speak directly with the mayor of New Orleans and pledged full federal support. So again, the White House deferring at this point to federal, state, and local authorities, but we do expect to hear from the president at some point based on his comments to reporters at the tarmac as he boarded Air Force One. Kate Morgan.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez for us. Gabe, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Trump, as Gabe mentioned, has also been weighing in, and what he's saying and what type of communication is there between the two presidents. That we're learning now as that's unfolding as we speak.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, that we find ourselves on New Year's Day of 19 days from today,
exactly.
Right? Is the inauguration of a new president. And joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian is with us. Yasmin, there's a lot of video circulating on social media from this morning. Can you help us understand? We've shown some of it, but help us understand what we're seeing.
Yeah. Our social media team here at NBC News has been going through all this video vigorously over the last couple of hours or so, guys. And as you can imagine, right, 3 o'clock in the morning, Bourbon Street, New Orleans, the first couple of hours of 2025, a lot of folks celebrating that moment in life, looking forward to the new year, but instead catching what took place at 3 o'clock in the morning, killing 10 people, likely more, 30-plus victims here on Bourbon Street. And the video is just horrifying to see. But before we kind of go through some of this video that you're seeing on your screen now, guys, I want to take a listen to a witness account, someone who heard what was going on Bourbon Street in their hotel room. Let's take a listen to April McGee and what she had to say about the TikTok of that evening, and then we'll go through some of the video that we've been watching.
I saw lots of fireworks, and then I laid down and I was watching them from my bed, and I heard maybe they were going off for quite some time. They didn't stop it at midnight, so I thought maybe it was like the final, whatever you call it, the grand finale. It was just loud, something really loud, and then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks.
Back, guys, I want to go back to the video you were just... So as we're hearing April there, I want to bring up the video, guys, that we were just showing before we went to April. And that was video of this individual you see approaching a dead body on the ground there. And one of the reasons why they take their camera away or their phone away from the scene to run, and you see the individual in the blue shirt running, is because you actually hear what appears to be gunshots. Now, we have heard from Tom Winter throughout the morning that they are investigating the possibility that the suspect, who is now dead, and we have now identified as a 42-year-old male U.S. citizen from Texas, had exchanged gunfire with police officers after ramming his car into individuals on Bourbon Street. I wonder if that is what we are hearing in that video there, if in fact that is gunshots. You see people kind of taking cover there. Now, when you're looking at this image here, it's of the white truck. This appears to be the truck of the suspect. You see the suspect then lying on the ground as well to the left of the truck. There is a photo, if we can bring this up, guys, from our control room, of the actual truck, the white pickup truck, with a flag in the back of the truck. You see it there. Now, we have talked about and identified, now our sources have identified the fact that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. Now, let's remind folks, this is a male U.S. citizen born here in the United States from Texas. Inspired by ISIS. And Tom Winter has talked about this many times, but I think it's important to reiterate. This type of attack is certainly something that has happened before from ISIS, and is certainly par the course for actions taken by ISIS. If you remember, the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was killed back in 2019 under the first Trump administration. But just because a leader of a terrorist organization like ISIS is killed doesn't necessarily mean you don't have people still following in the footsteps of the things they want to necessarily carry out. You're seeing here major police presence. I mean, imagine this, right? New Year's Eve, New Orleans, before the Sugar Bowl, just a couple of hours before the Sugar Bowl to take place tonight, the incredible amount of police presence already on the ground. And then now here, the aftermath of what appeared to be just a horrific attack on Bourbon Street overnight, guys, in New Orleans. And the video is continuing to pour in, really giving us a picture into the TikTok of this event. These people just celebrating. I mean, look at this video here, guys, right? An individual standing on their balcony, wanting to celebrate the first couple of hours of 2025, and instead, you see the blurred images there. Those are dead bodies on the ground. Those are individuals with families, with mothers, with fathers, with sisters, with brothers, possibly with children that will no longer see the rest of this year or the rest of their life because their life was taken last night in the first couple of hours of 2025. Just a horrific, horrific moment in this nation's history, and certainly for the city of New Orleans, when everybody should be celebrating, and in fact, instead, they are mourning.
Yeah. And again, to our viewers, we just need to describe the pall that has fallen over New Orleans as people are reacting to this incident. We are still awaiting an update on those victims, dozens who were taken to local area hospitals. We do not yet know what condition those victims are in. We do know that there were 2 police officers who were shot, and they are currently in stable condition. And we are going to continue monitoring those user-generated content, those videos that are coming in from eyewitness accounts all up and down Bourbon Street and Canal, which happened at 3:15 this morning local time. Our thanks to Yasmin Masukian.
It is 2 p.m. right now on the East Coast. It's 11 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Kate Snow.
I'm Morgan Radford. We are continuing our coverage of the breaking news in New Orleans, a horrific, deadly trunk attack now being investigated as an act of terrorism.
We are expecting an update from police and local officials in New Orleans any moment now. As soon as that happens, we will bring it to you live. Here is what we know in the meantime right now. The attack happened early this morning, just after 3 a.m., around 3 a.m. on the city's iconic Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. Police say a driver intentionally rammed his pickup truck into crowds celebrating the new year. At least 10 people are dead. We've been told to expect that there may be more fatalities, and more than 30 others are hurt. The FBI has identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. He is a U.S. citizen born in Texas. The FBI says he was killed in a shootout with police.
The Bureau also says an ISIS flag and other weapons were found inside that truck. The New Orleans police superintendent says the driver was hell-bent on creating carnage. A warning to our viewers, the images we are about to show you, they are disturbing. Videos posted to social media since this morning show bodies there, blurred, laying in the street. We have blurred parts of that clip as to not further disturb our viewers. But what you are seeing are bodies laying inert, prostrate there on Bourbon Street. You can see people rushing to render aid. Others are running shortly after. There was what sounded to be gunfire, which are consistent to the reports we've been reporting since 3:15 this morning.
And Morgan, we just got an update, a sad update, that they now say 15 people have died in this attack. Not 10, but 15 people have lost their lives. We think of those families.
Many of whom were running into nightclubs for safety and who have described the chaos when they went back outside. Let's take a listen.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos.
It just kept going. Like every eye shot, body. It was unbelievable. It was only could be referenced to a movie.
It was just loud, something really loud, and then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks. This is my first time hearing it. It'll probably be my last.
Not fireworks. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, who has been following this, really every development since the beginning. Tom, you had several recent developments for us in the past few minutes, really. I want to specifically talk about that black ISIS flag that we now know is hitched to the bed of that truck. Does that give us any indication about whether or not this was an actor who was acting alone or whether there were known associates?
Yeah, and I think we're about to get to this press conference shortly with New Orleans officials. Actually, maybe I'll pause here as we wait to get them started, but they should be starting shortly. We have heard, according to a senior U.S. law enforcement official briefed on the investigation, that unfortunately, as you mentioned, the death toll has risen to 15. We expect an update from the FBI here that they found an apparent ISIS flag in or on this vehicle, and there is an active search for potentially additional devices in that area, and that they believe that there is a possible improvised explosive device contained within that vehicle, as well as other weapons that are found. So we do expect to get more. We do expect preliminarily the numbers can change here. If there's ever a time that I've hoped to be wrong, it's on the death toll, but we do hear that perhaps as many as 15 have died, according to people that have been briefed on this investigation. As we've been speaking throughout the day here since really early this morning on NBC News, the injuries here have been truly horrific, and that's the information that we've been hearing and the information we've been hearing from the scene.
And Tom, this press conference that we're waiting for right now, and we'll go to it as soon as they're organized and ready to go, it's been delayed a couple of hours. I wonder if you have any intelligence on what's been happening behind the scenes. I mean, is it because they've been trying to figure out what, the facts before they can meet with us?
Well, there's the facts. There's a very active and ongoing investigation. Haven't seen one this active and hot for a long time. They are deriving a lot of information, and they're continuing to track down some pretty serious leads. I think they also have had to really have a self-reflection and a serious discussion in New Orleans about the ability to host the Sugar Bowl tonight, and whether that's something, given the law enforcement drain focused on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. You see how close this is. I've personally walked the distance from that exact address to the Superdome, and it is a very short distance. It's a big area to secure, and I think there's been some real discussions and some rumblings we've heard about whether or not this game should be postponed, just from having the amount of first responders available. You imagine, just from an EMS perspective, what they've gone through.
Tom, I want to go ahead and pause here. It looks like they are readying to have the assistant FBI agent in charge there, whom we see at the podium about to speak. Let's go ahead and just pause for one moment. Okay, wait, they're not yet organized. I believe they're going to have a few more seconds. In the meantime, Tom, I do want to go back to when you mentioned sort of the rumblings about the question of whether or not this Sugar Bowl can continue. One thing I just kept thinking about was these potential IEDs. If that's something that you have not completely ruled out, if that is something that you have not completely located, if we're talking about 2 and potentially 3, where do they stand on that? I mean, how can they sort of assure that the public is safe if they have not identified and completely flushed out the possibility of neutralizing that threat?
I would just repeat your question back to you and say that's a huge question that I would have. The other question I would have is, you have EMS workers that worked all through the night last night. Say something else happens tonight that's completely accidental. It's innocuous. There's a car accident near the scene or another incident. We'll turn it over to this press conference.
Here in FBI New Orleans. Thank you for being here today and for your patience. First, I want to acknowledge the victims of today's horrific attack. The FBI and our partners are working diligently to investigate and find answers on behalf of the victims, the citizens and residents of Louisiana, and everyone visiting the city. I'm going to provide you some facts and information about what we do know. I know that all of you will have questions, and we will try to provide some answers, but this is an ongoing investigation that's rapidly evolving. So there are some questions I will be unable to answer at this time. The FBI is the lead investigative agency, and we're investigating this as an attack of terrorism along with our partners. Today at approximately 3:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, an individual drove a pickup truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing at least 10 individuals and injuring dozens more. After hitting the crowd, he exited the vehicle and fired upon local law enforcement. Law enforcement returned fire, and the subject was pronounced deceased at the scene. 2 law enforcement officers were injured and transported to local hospitals. The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Shamsud Dim Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject came in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe. The FBI Special Agent bomb technicians, as well as our local law enforcement partners, have been working to determine if any of these devices are viable, and they will work to render those devices safe. The FBI, we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. We're aggressively running down all of the leads to identify the possible subject's associates. We're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Shamsud Dim Jabbar in the last 72 hours that you contact us. The FBI is asking the public's help. We're asking anyone who has information, video, or pictures to provide it to the FBI. We have set up a digital tip line as well as our 1-800 number, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Please provide us with any information that can assist us in this investigation. Once again, thank you for your patience and assistance. For an updated statements or information, please check the FBI's website and our social media accounts. I will now turn over to Mayor Cantrell. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agent Duncan, for your leadership and the full support of the FBI. First and foremost, I want to express my deepest condolences to the families and loved ones that were impacted by this tragedy on Bourbon Street and in the heart of the city of New Orleans. And I know that the entire New Orleans City Council grieves along right with me, no doubt about that, and our people and our families. My priority will continue to be to ensure that victims that remain on Bourbon Street now will be serviced and removed as soon as possible. But as stated, the FBI is in charge of this investigation and are doing everything necessary to make this happen. I also want to acknowledge hearing from President Biden, all of our federal partners, but most importantly, calling Governor Landry this morning, responded with haste, and we do say thank you. And of course, a demonstration of a unified support is right here in this room. That's how we collectively responded to this tragedy in the city of New Orleans. The mission now is to facilitate, support, and coordinate safety procedures to keep our residents and our visitors safe. I've gone to the hospital along with Chief Kirkpatrick to visit our police officers, and considering their injuries, they're doing well. As I mentioned, this investigation is ongoing, and the FBI remains the lead in the investigation. It is an active crime scene as well. We are committed, no doubt, to uncovering all details surrounding this tragedy. And we're taking every necessary step to put even more safety procedures in place, especially given the nature of the investigation. I'm going to ask people to do not go around our secured area if there is no essential need to do so. It matters, and again, it is an active crime scene. I also want you all to know that the Greater New Orleans Foundation has set up a fund to assist victims, and that information will be provided to you. Thank you, Ganoff. Again, I want to thank this unified team. We're leaning in. We will be relentless, and we will do everything that it takes to render real justice. This team will. I want to also just thank our citizens for your heartfelt prayers. New Orleans is a world-class city, and I can say that I've heard from world leaders all this morning and up until now, in addition to my brother and sister mayors across this country. They're calling, they're responding, and they're standing with the city of New Orleans. And what they always say and want me to reiterate, they understand the resilience of this community. And we're strong in that regard. And I will say second to none. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our governor. And as I mentioned, who has not wavered any in leaning in, providing the necessary support, and standing right here with me, and I say thank you, Governor. And I know the First Lady is standing with us as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Again, I want to thank the Mayor. Since about 3:45 this morning, when she called me, we have all been working just around the clock to both secure the city and to solve this act. You know, again, I want to reiterate that our prayers go out with all of those who have been affected by this tragedy. I want to thank our law enforcement officers. I want to thank our medical personnel. I want to thank our first responders. And most importantly, I want to thank the two New Orleans police officers who not only laid their life on the line, but were able to eliminate the threat this morning. Let me say, we have made public safety a state priority from day one. And I think that if you look around me today, right now, and you look at the people who are standing around, that is their commitment as well. We intend to be transparent in assessing any defects that may have existed in the system so that we can address them. It's the only way to ensure that any mistakes that were made are corrected. Specifically, we have been trying and working very diligently to address security concerns in preparation for the Super Bowl since October. And it's interesting because, ironically, in preparation for the Super Bowl, I had intended to issue an emergency declaration tomorrow so that we could bring all of our federal, state, and local agencies to bear in preparation for the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. But because of the events today, I have amended that emergency declaration and issued it today. So again, that declaration will allow our federal, state, and local partners to bring all of the resources necessary to get this city safe. In light of that executive order, I have also ordered the mobilization of a military police company. I've asked General Freelou to mobilize a military police company to assist both New Orleans Police and LSP and the FBI. It is important for our citizens and guests of this state to know that we are doing everything we can to secure their safety in this city. We want to make it clear, the Superdome and the surrounding area is safe. But I've always said that the safety of this entire city is something that is always paramount to me. With that, I would like to turn it over to Jeff with the Super Bowl Commission. Jeff Dunley.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Obviously, we wish we weren't here for this reason today.
The Sugar Bowl Committee has a 90-year history of being a good corporate citizen for the city of New Orleans, and that's why this tragedy hurts us as much as anybody right now. So our condolences, thoughts, and prayers go out to the victims and their families as we all work through this. Of course, anytime we have a major event in the city of New Orleans, public safety is paramount, and we have full faith and confidence in the governor and the mayor and all the assets, the federal, state, and local resources that they've applied to this event so that we can ultimately bring those responsible to justice and carry on with the major events that we have in front of us. Speaking of which, we were scheduled this evening to have a CFP quarterfinal played in the Superdome at 7:45. We have been in consultation with ESPN, with the College Football Playoff, with the Southeastern Conference, with the University of Georgia, with Notre Dame. All parties and all agree that it's in the best interest of everybody in public safety that we postpone the game for 24 hours. Work is fast about to set up a safe and efficient and fun environment for tomorrow night. There'll be more details on that in the coming hours, but for now, that's the plan, that we're going to move forward and play the game. And again, we reiterate our thanks to everyone up here for the important work they're doing. We live in the fun and games world with what we do, but we certainly recognize the importance of this, and we're going to support it 100%. So thank you.
I'd like to bring up Senator Kennedy.
I wish I understood better why bad things happen to good people. If I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. For those people who don't believe in objective evil, all you have to do is look at what happened in our city early this morning. If this doesn't trigger the gag reflex of every American, every fair-minded American, I'll be very surprised. I'm here because these are my people. I'm here because these are my people's friends. I'm here because there are a lot of Louisianians that are scared tonight. I don't want them to be. There's a lot of information going around. Some of it is actually true. Some of it isn't. The federal government is now in charge of this investigation. By that, I mean the White House, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. I have not talked to the FBI. Maybe they've talked to my staff. I don't know. I did talk to the Secretary of Homeland Security a little while ago. And I told him that with all the respect I could muster, that we expect to put the full force and resources of the federal government behind this investigation. Our state troopers, our local police departments, our sheriffs, we've got many sheriffs here today, have been terrific so far. The federal government is cooperating with them. I hope that will continue. Here's what I want to ask from the federal government. Catch these people. Catch these people. And then tell the American people the truth. Now, I don't want you to tell us yet anything that's going to interfere with your investigation. And there are things that I've been told that I think are true that I'm not sharing with you today because it could interfere with their investigation. But after we get to the bottom of this, they need to tell the American people the truth, and the people of New Orleans the truth, and the people of America the truth. I think the mayor and the governor are very wise to postpone this ball game for 24 hours. There's just too much stuff we don't know. And it's just not worth it. But I guess my final point is, I will promise you this: I will when it is appropriate and this investigation is complete, you will find out what happened and who was responsible. Or I will raise fresh hell. And I will chase those in the federal government who are responsible for telling us what happened, like they stole Christmas.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Congressman Carter, I think you're on.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Thank you to all of our law enforcement agents for doing a yeoman's job, for stepping up at a time when we needed you most, for employing the resources of all of our partners. This is all hands on deck. From the White House all the way down. I've been in communication with the White House since early this morning, Secretary Mayorkas, leaders in all of our federal, local, and state agencies. The President has made it very clear that he intends to bring every resource to bear to not only tell the truth, but to provide the resources to bring these cowards to justice. I want to personally thank the men and women in uniform who put their lives on the line to protect our citizens and our visitors. To our mayor and our governor for acting expeditiously and bringing us all together. To our sheriffs from the surrounding areas who have been Johnny on the spot, recognizing that if it happens in New Orleans, it can happen anywhere. We don't have the luxury of being myopic. In this community, we work together. We don't point fingers. We don't blame. We go after the bad guys. Let it be clear that the full faith and credit of the United States and every agency therein is on the ground, working. And for those who may have played a role in this horrific act of cowardice, we will find you. We will bring you to justice. New Orleans is a place that heralds its ability to protect its citizens, that heralds its ability to manage major events. Super Bowls, Sugar Bowls, Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, Essence Festival, you name it, no one does it better than law enforcement in New Orleans and in the surrounding area. Kudos to those 2 officers who've been wounded. Our hearts go out to those who lost loved ones. Our hearts go out to those who are wounded and on the mend in the hospital. Citizens, now is the time to stay calm, to be vigilant. This is not a time to come out to sightsee. Listen to your federal, local, state officials. Be vigilant. If you saw something, say something. If you know something, tell someone. There are tip lines, there's information available. Please, all hands on deck. Rest assured that the decision that was made to postpone the game was not done lightly. It was done with one single thing in mind: public safety. Making sure that the citizens and visitors of this great city, not only for this event, but for every event you come to in Louisiana, that you will be safe. And we will use every resource possible, as the governor has said, as the mayor has said, and every law enforcement agent here has said. Our energy, our commitment will be to make sure that you are safe now and for every event in the future. God bless you, and let's stay strong.
Thank you, Congressman.
Attorney General.
I first want to extend my sincerest condolences to the families of the victims. Parents got a phone call last night, early this morning, that no parent ever wants to receive. And as a parent of children who come to New Orleans and spend time here, I know that that is just something that, you know, we hold our breath sometimes till they're home safe, and some people did not come home safe. And we also have some people who are fighting for their lives right now in the hospital. So I'd ask everyone to pray for them. They need our support and they need our prayers. This was a heinous act, a heinous, cowardly act, and we will find them and we will bring them to justice. My office will be providing both investigative and prosecutorial support to the City of New Orleans, to the District Attorney, Jason Williams in New Orleans, as I have done for months. We will continue to do that. We will provide the governor with whatever support that he needs, and the Governor's Office of Homeland Security, whatever support that they need. I'll be here to help. I will be here to stand with the City of New Orleans. We will bring them to justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor and Madam Mayor. For those who do not know me, my name is Ann Kirkpatrick. I'm the Chief of Police of New Orleans. My official title is Superintendent, but my role is as Chief of Police. You know, you've heard some of the details today, and over the last 24 hours, we had approximately 400 officers in the French Quarter. And as we know, this is not just an act of terrorism. This is evil. And when we face evil, we have a choice. We can run in fear, or we can indeed stand in strength. In a time of crisis, people are looking for leadership. You are looking at the leadership. And I promise you, as the Chief of Police of this city has been tried by fire before. But fire purifies. Fire makes things stronger. We have a plan. We know what to do. We are going to get these people. There is a path forward. Very pleased that we will be back to having a wonderful game tomorrow night. New Orleans police have proven their ability to make the city safer. Just 2 years ago, we were the murder capital of America. Today, from that time 2 years ago, we have driven our murder rate more than 50% down. So we have a track record. But this is different because it's terrorism. Now, I want to thank all of our law enforcement partners. You're fabulous, and we appreciate the partnership. But last night, 3 of our officers engaged this terrorist who shot at them. 3 of the officers returned fire. Those officers did not run in fear. I liked what the mayor said this morning. New Orleans police and all law enforcement is built. We are built for dealing with evil, with things that would cause others to be in fear, but instead our officers, and last night NOPD particular, stood strong. They did not run. They did kill the terrorist. We have 2 officers indeed who received gunfire. They will be okay, and we have personally gone to see them. But this is leadership for you, and I promise, as the Chief of Police of this fantastic city, that I will be strong and firm and fearless. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. In wrapping it up, I want to just close with a couple of things. I want to thank Senator Kennedy and Congressman Carter. I want to thank again all of our law enforcement officers out there. I want the families of the victims to know that I will be issuing an executive order that tomorrow, when Notre Dame plays Georgia, every flag of every state building in this state is going to be at half-mast. In remembrance of them, but remembering something else. That fear in this state is a liar. And these folks right here are going to make sure that justice is served. And for the citizens out there that were saying, well, man, do I really want to go to the Sugar Bowl tomorrow? I'll tell you one thing, your governor's going to be there. That is proof, believe you me, that that facility in this city is safer today than it was yesterday. And as we come to additional events in this city, I know in speaking with Senator Kennedy and Congressman Carter, and FBI acting director, and the incoming administration, that they are going to ensure that this city has the resources necessary to protect our citizens and our guests. And so with that, we'll take some questions.
All right, if you could, we'll start over here with CBS. Katie, we'll work our way across the room. If I miss you, just give me a holler. I may not see you. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, sir. Katie Royce with CBS News. I mean, I think this has been a really tough day for a lot of people, but at this point, we're hearing that the death toll, according to some FBI sources, has gone up to 15. Is this true?
Who wants to answer that? Yeah.
I can speak for it, because unless you have a final number. We do not have a final number. We know that we have confirmed 10, but we did have people who had been transported who were in critical condition. And so I do not know that, but I can confirm 10.
And one quick follow-up question, if I may. We know that there have been some local records in Texas about a misdemeanor background on this suspect. Any signs or warnings ahead of time about this person or their plans for what happened this morning?
Because that is the investigation part, I will give the FBI.
At this time, we cannot go into details about the subject's history. What I can tell you, the person was an Army veteran. We believe he was honorary discharged, but we're working through this process, figuring out all this information. The goal with the FBI is providing you with the most accurate and complete information. So once that information is confirmed, we'll make sure we push that out. Thank you.
Ariel.
At this time, do you know exactly, as far as the victims, how many are from here in Louisiana versus out of state, and their ages maybe?
At this time, I can't go into details about all the victims. We want to make sure that first that the family is notified appropriately before we put any information out there. So once the families are all notified, then we'll go ahead and release a statement to everyone.
And I would ask the press, in relation to the victims and those that are in hospitals, if we could just refrain from worrying about them so their loved ones can take care of them, and the medical personnel that are trying to get them out of the hospital can do so. And as information becomes available, but we want to respect the privacy of those who are still either fighting for their lives or being cared for. Thank you.
A follow-up if I may.
Go ahead.
You guys mentioned accomplices. You don't think that the suspect acted alone. About how many more suspects are you guys looking into at this point?
It's a range of suspects. Right now with the FBI, we do not run a rule anything out, so that's why we're asking if anyone has had any interaction with the deceased subject Jabbar in the last 72 hours. Provide us with this information. You can provide us that information through 1-800-CALL-FBI or our digital tips line, which is available on our social media website, as well as the big FBI website.
Can I say something, Veronica? Tell me who you're with.
WDSU.
WDSU. Okay, and CBS.
NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
I don't get it.
You wouldn't. Look, the FBI is not going to be able to answer those questions, okay? They will eventually. I promise you. Okay, once the FBI has a chance to investigate all this, along working with state police, working with Homeland Security, working with the city of New Orleans, they're going to tell you what happened. I can promise you that, or I'm going to raise fresh hell. But right now, they're in the process of trying to catch the other bad guys. And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while.
26.
Yeah, I had a question about the victims. I know there was obviously gunfire exchange, so I guess how many victims were shot and then how many were injured?
Look, again, let me reiterate both Special Agent Duncan and Senator Kennedy. There's a lot of, I get that y'all want to know minute details. What we don't want to do is impede this investigation or spend any time talking about things that don't get us closer to hunting these folks down and securing this city. And so at a particular point in time, we will release as much information as we can. But at this time, in relation to the investigation, I would ask y'all to refrain from those.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if we are going to just have more of the same, as the governor just said, we're going to provide that information, but we're going to wrap the press conference now. Hold on. Let me finish. You weren't listening. If all of the questions are more of the same, what the governor just said in position, we won't be doing that to provide that information. And if you have a quick, different question, then let's do that quickly and move on, okay?
Hold on. We're going to do this action.
Ma'am. Hold on.
Then who was next? We had over here.
Hi, Rachel Wolf from the Wall Street Journal. You said you were confident there are multiple suspects involved. What makes you confident?
Well, like, why would we tell you that? Again, again, we want to answer pertinent questions. But anything that would lead to impeding or endangering this investigation is not going to be said, okay? And we will, as information unfolds, this is a very fluid process. And remember something, too. We're doing two things. We're hunting some bad people down, and we're securing the city, too. We're getting ready for a Sugar Bowl tomorrow. So if y'all would, again, if you have questions regarding Sugar Bowl, the safety of the city, or something to that effect, we're happy to answer.
Over here.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Alyssa.
Give me 1 second. Usually in parts of the French Quarter, specifically in parts of Bourbon Street, there are bollards. We're hearing that some of those may have been down because of repairs. Can you speak to that? And maybe was there any backup option of putting a truck there or an NOPD car there?
Well, let me tell you, yeah, one, I'm going to let the mayor answer. I want you to know that's one of the first things I thought of this morning when the mayor called me, okay? And I will tell you that whatever the problem was is going to be solved.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor, and thank you for the question. I do understand that it's been on your radar since this morning. As it relates to the bollards on Bourbon Street, over 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, the city of New Orleans implemented an infrastructure project placing bollards on Bourbon Street. Shortly thereafter, the malfunctions of those bollards ensued, from Mardi Gras beads on down. But the New Orleans Police Department, of course, deemed them inefficient because they did not operate the way that they were intended to do. Because the city of New Orleans is hosting Super Bowl this year, it gave the city of New Orleans an opportunity to go further and deeper with infrastructure improvements, as we've been talking about. So as a result of that, we were able to build in bollard replacement into our Super Bowl infrastructure package. And because of that, the city of New Orleans has moved forward with that infrastructure that is nearing completion. Bollards were not up because they are near completion, with the expectation of being completed, of course, by Super Bowl and way before Super Bowl. But that is the reason. Now, the New Orleans Police Department and Chief, you can speak to the deployment as to respond to our needs and existing conditions.
All right, so we have been aware of the bollard situation for a long time, and we did indeed harden those target areas where the bollards are. We have patrol cars out there as a hard target, as well as with barriers. Now, I want to share with y'all, if you did not know, that this particular terrorist drove around onto the sidewalk and got around the hard target, where he did have a car there, we had barriers there, we had officers there, and they still got around. Now, the wedges that you see out there as well, we knew that that had malfunction problems. And I want you to understand, let's say we put the wedge up and it got stuck. There is no way that ambulance could get in or out, people couldn't get in and out, so we knew that these were malfunction. So we did indeed have a plan, but the terrorist defeated it.
Let me just say this. We recognize we got a problem right here, right? We're going to fix it. It is going to be a top priority as we go into the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. And the solution that we're going to come up with is going to be a permanent one. It's going to be placed into the standard operating procedure of having major events and securing that quarter.
A follow-up, if I may. Obviously, Super Bowl postponed until tomorrow, but I'm sure after that game, a lot of people are going to want to celebrate. Are there plans to keep Bourbon Street closed? What does that look like?
So right now, Bourbon Street is an active crime scene, and the FBI is in charge of it. When they clear it, and it does not become an active crime scene anymore, we're going to open it up.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Fox 8. Can we ask about this military police presence that you want to call it? Is this a private security like Blackwater? Also, would that be a first that a private security firm is mobilized to supplement local and state law enforcement?
No. We're not. This is our National Guard. Yep. These are our citizens that we bring it in. It's a military police company that we recognize we need some more resources. We need some more boots on the ground because, again, what we're doing now is twofold. We've got an active investigation, and we've got enhanced security. Before this event, we were just enhancing and working on security. So we brought some additional resources.
Jesse Kirsch with NBC News. Thank you for holding the press briefing. I just want to clarify something first. You were just talking about bollards that are being repaired, talking about a lift gate that are replaced and then a lift gate that's not been working. Was there a vehicle in place of that lift gate last night? Were there things in place of those bollards which are being repaired?
Sure. The chief spoke to the plan in place, and that is yes.
That was indeed.
So anything that is currently in the midst of being repaired had a backup replacement?
It had vehicles and officers were there where all of those ballasts have been. We had that. We knew. So we did have it. And like I said, in this particular case, terrorists just went all the way around up onto the sidewalk.
And the lift gate, what about the lift gate? Was there a vehicle like backing in and out to block that lift gate area, or was that just down and open? Because that's what we've heard from witnesses.
Chief, Captain. The reason I'm calling the captain, he's the captain over that district, and that is a question I'm going to let him address for you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Captain LaJean Roberts of the 8th District. Yes, we did have a vehicle strategically placed right in front of the wedge, preventing access onto the roadway.
And in terms of the framework of security that was already in place on Bourbon Street, I know this is an ongoing project of improvement, but with how that was all aligned, was someone getting up on a sidewalk considered impossible or nearly impossible, or was this not something you expected you would have to account for?
Yes, of course, it wasn't something we expected to account for. The bollards they're actually wedges. They're strategically placed 5 locations throughout the French Quarter on the roadway. This particular terrorist drove onto the sidewalk behind the police car to gain access to the 100 block of Bourbon Street.
So if you're worried about someone ever driving down Bourbon Street, why weren't you worried about someone driving up the sidewalk in the same way, or at least bracing for you the same way?
Okay. All right, look. We could go on what ifs forever. This is evil. And that guy could have easily gone down the sidewalk of Canal Street, where there were a ton of pedestrians on there as well.
And there are
That's right. No, right.
So that's, I'm
right.
just asking.
Hold on a second. We got to move on.
Just want you to know, however, we recognize, I said earlier, that where there are defects in this system, we are going to be transparent, and we are going to address them with the city and make sure that we fill those gaps as best we can.
Yeah, Chelsea Brace with Axios. I have a question just about sort of ongoing public safety today. Special Agent mentioned 2 possible IEDs. Were those in the same location? Should residents in the French Quarter or elsewhere be concerned about potential other situations?
The
2 IEDs that were in different locations, and what we've done in conjunction with our local and state partners, we've gone through and done a sweep to identify anything that we thought was suspicious, and we have not. However, as I said before, if the public sees something, please reach out to us so that way we can go through and verify that we did not miss anything. But we conducted initial sweeps, I think, starting shortly after our initial conference.
I'm going to thank you, Adrian. I do want to share that we have a plan, and we have been implementing that plan. One of those plans is that we have swept all of these areas. The word swept means we have put officers out there as a grid, walking down the streets, every street in the French Quarter, looking for suspicious packages, bags, ice chest, you name it. And they have been walking it as a grid. We've been doing the same thing on Poydras and all the accesses into the Superdome. Part of the safety plan is we have bomb dogs out there sweeping the Superdome and all the exterior area, and we're locking that down. That will be locked down through the game tomorrow. So that's a part of that safety plan, and we've already been implementing it.
Okay, thank you all for coming out.
Question back here for the governor on the MTs. How many MTs will be deployed to New Orleans?
Right now, there's I think it's a Freelo 100. 100. 100, and, yep. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
What gives you the confidence tomorrow night it'll be safe? Right.
I'm going to be there.
Yes,
Me too.
You're all saying thank you for concern.
Yeah, we're going to be there.
You are joining us right now for an NBC News special report. You've been listening to a news conference with the FBI, the New Orleans mayor, and other Louisiana officials. The biggest new detail we have learned is that the FBI does not believe that the suspect in the truck attack acted alone. In fact, they're asking for the public's help in finding his associates. They say that 42-year-old Shamsu-Din Jabbar, they believe did not act alone. They are looking for what they called a range of suspects, and they're asking for anyone who has interacted with him, especially in the past 72 hours, to call their digital tip line. That is 1-800-CALL-FBI, or they said you can go to the FBI's website or their social media accounts. Also, interestingly, the Mayor LaToya Cantrell asked people to not violate their secured area. It is still an active crime scene as they're on the hunt for anyone who could have been associated with that suspect. Governor Jeff Landry there saying that he has organized an emergency declaration to organize resources there. And of course, we have updates now on that Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, the Sugar Bowl, we have learned, the big college football playoff game that was scheduled for tonight in New Orleans at the Super Bowl has now been postponed 24 hours until tomorrow. Again, it was scheduled for tonight. They say they're prioritizing public safety by postponing that game. And Morgan, just to note a couple of other things, we heard the Attorney General of the state of Louisiana say that there are many victims who are still in the hospital. Some are fighting for their lives, she said. And one last note, we heard from several of the authorities there saying they're hunting these folks down were the words that the governor used in describing additional suspects that they think they may be looking for. The FBI agent in charge, assistant agent in charge, said we're looking at a range of suspects. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, and also Carmen Best, NBC News law enforcement analyst, retired Seattle police chief. Tom, for the viewers who just joined us and maybe didn't hear everything, there was a lot in that press conference. The biggest thing, as Morgan said, seemed to be that this is not just one person, they believe. They've got a suspect who is deceased, but they think there are potentially more people out there who helped him.
That's exactly right, Kate, and that is the big information from this press conference. They are looking for anybody that knows what this individual is. Shamsu-Din Jabbar, 42 years old, born in Texas. Current address, public records lookup shows that he has ties to the Houston area. We obviously know from that truck that we reported earlier today had Texas license plates on it. It was a rented Ford truck, so this was not a truck that this individual owned. And they are, according to the FBI, there is a belief that they are looking for other individuals. And we heard that at numerous times during the press conference, not just from the FBI, but from other state officials and from a U.S. senator. But we didn't hear specifically who they're looking for or how serious this might be. We did get confirmation, something that we've been reporting throughout the course of the afternoon here at NBC News, that there were at least 2 other IED-type devices that they found that could have been planted near here, that they're trying to determine whether or not those are viable explosives, as well as a potential improvised explosive device, a homemade explosive that was found inside the vehicle. Again, the FBI there and their special agent bomb technicians trying to determine whether or not that was a viable explosive as well. There were weapons that were found in the car. There was an apparent ISIS flag that was on this vehicle, and that is information the FBI is all now saying publicly. The question here is, who are they looking for? Is there an active threat? And that is information that we did not hear from there. We have been reporting since about 10 a.m. this morning Eastern time that this is a very hot and active federal investigation, a counterterrorism investigation that is being looked after at FBI headquarters. This is an investigation involving multiple FBI field offices, and they are trying to determine right now the travels of this particular individual, who they've been interacting with, and if there's anybody else who they have associations with in the past with possible prior criminal records that they need to be looking at. But this is a terrorist attack, the likes of which we have not seen in some time in this country, and the fact that it could involve multiple individuals, at least according to the FBI, is significant. So we're trying to determine who those individuals are, where they might be, and what happened. This incident happening at 3:15 local time there in New Orleans. You're looking at it. We have video that I don't know if we have yet ready to play, but video that I viewed, surveillance video of this attack. The driver goes down Canal Street. and makes a right where you see that dot on screen, the 3:15 a.m. car drives into large crowd. Where you see that dot, he's driving Canal Street from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. He goes up Canal Street. He sees the police car that's located in the middle of the street. But just as our own Jesse Kirsch from NBC News was pressing there at that media press conference and asking questions about, he goes around the police car up on the sidewalk. There are steel barriers there that are going to be no match for a pickup truck or for any other large-sized vehicle, and hits the gas. You're looking now at the video. We have it here. You're going to see this truck make this move to the right, boom, right there, and he moves very quickly as he goes up on the sidewalk, passes that police car, and then goes down Bourbon Street. Again, that's what we saw from that surveillance video. He ends up here, the video you're looking at now, crashing into that lift that was in the center of the street. And the reason why people are running, we're not playing the audio from this just because it's, as you can imagine, filled with profanities of people obviously scared about what was happening there. But there's a hail of gunfire that begins now, and that's why everybody starts running. We saw bullet holes in that car, and as we know, and we've been reporting throughout this morning since shortly after 7 a.m., this individual fired at police. Police fired at this individual, and they're looking into whether or not he was firing in the course of running people over on Bourbon Street, one of the most iconic streets in this country, in the course of committing this attack that's killed at least 10, and that death toll is expected to rise potentially given the serious nature of the injuries that have occurred during the course of this alleged attack. So they're searching the area. You heard police say that they're surveying it. There will be enormous questions that are being asked already, that will be asked in the future, as to why there are not more bollards on that sidewalk to prevent vehicles from going up on the sidewalk. Look, it's just a fact of life. You see them all over New York City. You see them around our offices here. It's just a situation now where this is a known thing that people want to do, whether they're terrorists, whether they're motivated by hate, all sorts of ideologies, to take a vehicle and run it down a sidewalk or run it down a street and run people over. It's something we've seen a lot in this country. It's something we've seen often overseas, particularly in Europe. And so there will certainly be questions about New Orleans safety plan, particularly given the fact it's New Year's Eve, it's Bourbon Street. You know this is going to be a target late. But I think the big question right now, to go back to it, is what has the FBI uncovered? What are they still hoping to uncover about this individual, his known associates, And from there, what can they learn as far as anybody else who might have been helping out, who may have planted these possible IEDs, and is there a further security concern? We already heard that the Sugar Bowl is going to be postponed 48 hours. 24 hours as they wait this. That was something that was expected. You and I were talking about it before this press conference began, just a drain on law enforcement and first responder resources for any major event like that. To have that event when they've gone through so much over the last 12 hours or so would be very difficult for them. So this is definitely an ongoing investigation. It's a hot terrorism investigation, and we haven't seen something like this in a while.
Tom, it sounds like, from what we're learning, there are two things happening right now in this city at the same time. One, they are searching for more suspects. Two, they are trying to secure the city. I want to get onto that plan in the next few hours to secure the city. But there's one thing I just cannot let go, that the assistant FBI agent in charge said during that press conference, that the suspect was an Army veteran and they believe that he was honorably discharged. What more do we know about the so-called criminal pedigree or criminal history of this suspect?
Yeah, that's information that we're getting into. Doesn't appear to be a significant criminal history involving this individual, and we are trying to get some more information. We have in the past. Our Pentagon team is on it trying to figure out more information about his service record. A lot of those records are not something that is normally made public, but in the past we have been able to learn some details. And as it pertains to Shamsuddin Jabbar, who again the FBI is looking for any information on, this is somebody who obviously they have some records with. It explains perhaps why they're able to identify him so quickly. Perhaps they had their fingerprints. The FBI has the ability to turn around that fingerprint information so fast using new technology that they have. The question now is was he working in concert with other people? They believe so. And so who are those individuals? Did he serve with anybody that could be of a potential interest to him? Speaking specifically to your question, Morgan, which is about his military history, and were there any signs of any potential issues while he was in the military? All questions that deserve answers. They're undoubtedly working on it. We certainly are as well.
Carmen, thank you, Tom. And Carmen, let me just go to you quickly before we hit the top of the hour here. We do have the suspect's name, as Tom has just said. We, I believe, have, this is a picture that we're looking at right now. This is a live picture, live video coming from outside the suspect's home. Can anybody in the control room tell me where? Houston, Texas. I see the ID there. So this is a live picture of the house that we believe is associated with the suspect, who again is deceased at this point. Carmen, one other thing that was brought up, many things were brought up in the press conference, but I believe I heard the governor talk about National Guard. I'm not sure if I heard that completely correctly, but I think he was saying they were bringing in additional resources. Did you hear that? And does that, I guess I'm wondering, are they going to be ready for the Sugar Bowl tomorrow night?
24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours from now?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Kate. Yeah, certainly he did mention bringing in Governor Landry, the National Guard. That is common in a situation like this to have the National Guard help to reinforce resources that are being depleted for other activities and other assignments. That said, it's also very clear from what they were saying that they believe that there is a credible threat that exists. They are going to try to find out who these additional perpetrators are. And certainly they're not going to let that Sugar Bowl occur until they have that figured out and under control. So while they're saying 24 hours, I'm raising a brow to that. Well, I hope that that is true, but I'm pretty sure that they will not allow this to occur until they know exactly what they're dealing with. The suspect's Army history certainly raises a question about where he was deployed, who he contacted, what his job was in the Army, what information he had. All of those things they're working on to get answered. And until they have real clear answers about that and who else may have been involved, they are probably not going to let that Sugar Bowl occur. So they're giving us a 24-hour time period. It's a wait and see, if you ask me.
Carmen Best with us. Carmen, thank you so much. Our thanks also to Tom Winter, who was with us a short time ago. Appreciate you. And our thanks to Morgan Radford, who is going to take her leave. You've been here for hours and hours and hours. And I'm Kate Snow, and we'll get We'll continue now with our coverage and get you up to date on what we know at this hour. It is 3 p.m. on the East Coast. It is noon Pacific time. Our coverage of the deadly car attack in New Orleans continues. Here's what we know. The attack happened early this morning on Bourbon Street. Police say a driver intentionally rammed a pickup truck into crowds celebrating the new year. Police have confirmed at least 10 people are dead. The FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. A short time ago, the FBI identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. He is a U.S. citizen, born in Texas, we're told. The FBI says he was killed in a shootout with police this morning. However, the Bureau believes he did not act alone.
We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Shamsuddin Jabbar in the last 72 hours that you contact us.
The FBI also says an ISIS flag and other weapons were found on the truck. It appeared to crash into a crane after the attack. A warning that what we're about to show you now is disturbing. Videos posted to social media by witnesses that have been verified by NBC News show bodies laying in the street. We have blurred parts of the clip so that you don't see that. Witnesses described the horror that they saw and heard firsthand.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos.
It just kept going. Like every eye shot, body. It was unbelievable. It was only could be referenced to a movie.
It was just loud, something really loud, and then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks. This is my first time hearing it. It'll probably be my last.
Just some of the things that we're hearing from folks down there who witnessed what happened. Now, let's talk about the Sugar Bowl. We just learned that big college football playoff game has been postponed 24 hours until tomorrow night. It was scheduled to be played tonight at the Superdome in New Orleans. And joining me now from there, NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch. Jesse, you were also at the press conference, so let me start by asking you about what you heard in that room. We've been trying to sort of digest and tell the viewers what news we got out of that, but why don't you tell us what struck out to you?
Yeah, and I want to give you the latest information that we have. I'm from someone with the governor's team. Just spoke with a colleague of ours, Kate, and we're going to just walk down the block. You mentioned we're outside of the Superdome. This is it. It is supposed to be hosting a college football game nationally televised tonight. That's been called off for at least 24 hours. And we also now know, or I should say, it's been called off for at least 24 hours. And this is all supposed to host the Super Bowl in less than 2 months. But what I am now learning from our colleague who just spoke with someone from the governor's team, we weren't quite clear on whose call it was for the game to be postponed. Was it officials from the Sugar Bowl itself trying to just be sensitive to the situation and take a pause or account for security from their standpoint, or was it a government decision? And what we're told from the governor's team is that this was a decision made by state and local authorities, the government. And that is sticking out to me because this morning, Kate, just hours after this all unfolded. Also, I just want to be clear, you're hearing sirens. We've got flashing blue lights. Police vehicles are going to be coming by me right now. This is where the press conference was. These are motorcade vehicles, it appears. So I just want to be clear, we're not looking at an imminent security situation where I am right now. Obviously, this city is on edge, and as you mentioned, they do not think the suspect acted alone. So obviously, tensions, you can imagine, are raised in this city right now. But to be clear, that appears to have just been a motorcade. A lot of law enforcement personnel have been where I am right now. But just going back to what we were talking about, Kate, the fact that this was a government decision, just hours after this incident occurred, the first press conference, or I shouldn't even call it a press conference, first media on-camera statement we heard from officials, because they did not take questions at that event, which included local officials as well as the FBI. Authorities said that they were saying to people they could go about their day, just stay away from the French Quarter, specifically the Bourbon Street area. They were not telling people that the game was called off. They were not even suggesting that it was being considered at that point. And so something clearly has changed in the mindset of officials to make them make that decision and change the language around it. So that stuck out to me, and that just speaks, I think, to the fluidity of the situation. The other thing that really sticks out to me from this press conference, and this is something that I asked for clarity on, is that officials here in the city of New Orleans are in the midst of an ongoing process to improve the barriers along Bourbon Street. The goal is to have this completed by the Super Bowl. This is something that they knew they wanted to fix up. So going into New Year's Eve, they had deficiencies that they wanted to improve in that area. But something that was not part of the plan to begin with, something that was not in place already, I should say, on Bourbon Street are bollards, these barriers, effectively right about the size of a fire hydrant, not a fire hydrant, but probably about this size, and something that is solid and is meant to be a protective barrier. And you might see that, you see those in major cities at major locations all over the place. Those were in place along Bourbon Street, an area, of course, with a lot of foot traffic, with a lot of people that would be exposed, right, potentially in a soft target area, if you will. But the sidewalks over there did not have those kinds of barriers protecting them. And so I think that is going to be one of the real questions moving forward, is why that was not considered, or was it considered and ultimately decided against. And what I can tell you from the press conference in there is that officials said that wasn't something they had accounted for previously. And that really stuck out to me, Kate, because I know that when I think about sidewalks, I've walked down to major cities. Even what seemed like more run-of-the-mill sidewalks, let alone a tourist destination like Bourbon Street, I've seen those before. And the fact that they weren't up there while they were actively worried about a threat on the street itself just doesn't really align with logic, I think, fully. And I think it's something that would catch a lot of people by surprise.
All right, Jesse Kirsch, really appreciate your reporting there. I know you've just been there a few hours. I'll let you go do some more reporting and we'll get back to you. Thank you. Let me bring in NBC News Justice correspondent Ken Delanian, who has also been with us from the very beginning here. Ken, the big news, as we keep saying, out of that law enforcement briefing a short time ago, is that they do not believe that the suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, acted alone. What more do we know about this? We heard them mention a range of suspects. What are you hearing from your sources?
Not much, Kate. We are working right now to try to learn what we can about this because, frankly, that news conference, those folks were not very forthcoming about this, and it's not clear why. It's not clear whether they don't know the identities of these alleged co-conspirators and have a vague idea and are trying to run them down, or they do know the identities, but they don't want to portray crucial elements of the investigation. They don't want these people to know they know, or what's going on. Because oftentimes when the FBI is trying to find suspects who are at large, they provide as much information as they can to the public and ask the public for help. And they have asked the public for help in this case. They just haven't said who these people might be that they are seeking, who they say, as you said, a range of co-conspirators. At one point, one of the officials said, we have some bad people we need to run down. Well, who are those bad people and where might they be? And the fact that they've now postponed the Sugar Bowl really underscores the fact that they don't have this thing wrapped up. And Kate, we haven't seen a terrorist attack of this magnitude and scope in a long time. There have been a lot of lone wolf attacks in this country since 9/11, but I can't recall one of this complexity where there were co-conspirators at large, 12 hours after the event, or even more than that, and the FBI is saying we're looking for these people and we're not telling you who they are. So that is a huge deal, and we're working to learn more about that. Obviously, one of the big questions is they said they found IEDs in the city. Did this dead suspect plant those bombs, or did somebody else plant those bombs? And how did he get the weapons, and how did he build those bombs? Did he act alone there? We believe that he rented the car through a sort of an Airbnb for autos, and so the owner of that car, we believe, had no connection to this. But there are many other aspects of this that remain unanswered, and that's what really struck me from that news conference, is that they just didn't have answers to those questions, either didn't want to or couldn't answer those questions, Kate.
Yeah, it was striking to me as well, some of the language, as you said. The governor said hunting these folks down. The police superintendent said we are going to get these people, but they didn't really identify who these people are. Perhaps that's, Ken, you know better than I do, but I assume that maybe some of that might be they're protecting what they do know because they don't want the public to know just yet. And I know they've asked for the public's help. I mean, that was striking as well, right? They're asking anyone who has associated with this man to come forward.
Yeah. Now, oftentimes they don't reveal things because they don't want the subjects, the targets, to know what they know. But in this case, if you presume that there are co-conspirators here, and the FBI is announcing that, then the co-conspirators know that the FBI knows about them, right? So it's hard to understand why they wouldn't want to reveal more information to the public in order to elicit the public's help if people are at large. But there is the possibility that they don't know, that they just have a vague idea based on surveillance that they've done or analysis they've done of the subject's devices, that there is a network, but they don't know the identities of the people. There's also the possibility that was raised by Frank Figluzzi, one of our law enforcement contributors, a longtime FBI official, that the FBI knows a lot about these people because they were already on the FBI's radar. Now, again, that's not confirmed, that's speculation, but we've often seen that in these cases. People with ties to ISIS or sympathies to ISIS often come on the FBI's radar. The FBI is doing significant surveillance and investigation in the counterterrorism realm, and that doesn't mean they're arrested or charged. That the FBI may be aware of them and maybe watching them or not watching them, and that's something we're going to be asking about in the future here, whether that's a possibility. But yeah, a lot of questions raised by that news conference and some significant answers missing, Kate.
All right, Ken Delanian for us, monitoring all of this in real time. Ken, thank you so much. Joining me now, the District Attorney for Orleans Parish, Jason Williams, is with us. Mr. District Attorney, thank you for your time. I'm sure it's an extremely busy day for you. We're all thinking of your community right now and thinking of those affected by this horrible tragedy. Can you talk about what is happening at your level right now? I don't know if you could hear the conversation I was just having with our reporter, Ken Delanian, but we were talking about the press conference and the information that was given was a bit vague, and maybe that's intentional in terms of who out there might have helped this individual suspect, who are the group of suspects that they're now trying to identify. The governor talked about hunting these folks down. Can you help us understand what's happening in your city?
Sure. Typically, when you have a violent act like this, the focus is solely on catching the perpetrators and any accomplices that were involved. Because it's the city of New Orleans and we're hosting a national event, it is also securing the city and the facilities for the upcoming event as well. So it's a twofold piece. And I would just say that the lack of information in the press conference was purposeful. Based upon the stage of the investigation. It is currently being headed up by the FBI, but there are multiple agencies playing multiple roles in this investigation right now. Understand the crime scene itself is blocks long, and bodies are still on Bourbon Street as we speak because it is a crime scene and it's got to be documented and memorialized meticulously, not only to do an autopsy after the fact of what occurred here, why and how, to make sure that there are lessons learned and problems and mistakes fixed by city leadership. But it's also an active crime scene. And it's got to be preserved. And they're still walking the grid looking for potentially other IEDs that may have been put in a trash can or left in an abandoned car. And we just can't speculate about the number of people that might have been involved and where this thing might have started. There have been some indications that perhaps the reason that this individual drove into the crowd is because the IEDs did not perform as intended. All that is right now just speculation. And we've got to make sure that we're circumspect about what's shared with the public. But please rest assured, I expect the FBI, when they have more information, to come to the public with specific asks and specific things to look for.
No, and I fully understand, and I'm sure our audience does too, our viewers understand the lack of information is purposeful, as you said, that you can't reveal everything to the public because that might tip off someone that you're actually looking for right now, I imagine. Can we assume that this is, can you say whether this is local to New Orleans at this point, or is there a broader effort to find people going on in other states across the country?
Well, he came in from another state, and he rented a car in another state. So it is much broader than the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. I mean, I live here. Obviously, this hits me in a way that I haven't been able to eat, and I'm sick to my stomach. I was in the French Quarter last night having dinner with friends. My college-age son was on Bourbon Street, steps away from where this incident happened. So I woke up in a panic when I found out about this. So this was absolutely an attack on my home, but this was an attack on America. This was an attack on this country and the way that we live, and an attempt to disrupt that. And so I hope that other cities are taking note, especially the ones that are hosting large events like bowl games, to make sure that they are paying close attention to everything that happened here so they can secure their homes based on what we know and based on what we're learning today.
Yeah. Mr. Williams, I've been to Bourbon Street. It's a wonderful area. It's a wonderful place to be in happy times. And I appreciate that you were there last night, and I can imagine how you feel having been so close to what happened. For those unfamiliar with Bourbon Street in that area, what is typical security there? Because there were a lot of questions at the press conference, as you know, about the fact that those barricades, the stanchions that come up out of the ground, were under construction. They were being replaced, and so they had to do other things. What is typical in that area?
So years ago, before I was DA, I was president of the New Orleans City Council, and I think it was probably about 2017, 2018, after an attack with a vehicle in Europe, in which a terrorist drove a truck into a crowd. We decided that we needed to put more protections around areas like the French Quarter that are densely populated, that are basically soft targets for terrorism. And we put measures in place to put up these remote control bollards, the type of thing you would expect to see at the White House and other places. And these bollards go up and they stop vehicle traffic from being able to interact with citizens. It appears there was some malfunction with this particular bollard that this individual entered through. However, regardless of that, this individual drove up on the sidewalk because there's a police cruiser planted where the bollards would have normally been. And he drove up on the sidewalk and went around to wreak the havoc and carnage that he caused. One thing I do want to say is the first responders on the scene. This attack was intended to cause much more death, harm, and carnage than it did. And that is only because of the quick action of the NOPD. The New Orleans Police Department reacted very quickly to neutralize this threat. And had they not, there would have been more loss of life.
Yeah, and we've heard that the two officers who were shot in this whole incident are doing okay. The chief of police, I believe, said they're going to be all right. So that's some good news. Can I go back to something you just said, though? You said the car went up on the sidewalk, and that's what we heard at the press conference. The pickup truck went up on the sidewalk and drove around a police vehicle that was there. Is this going to, I imagine this is going to change everything for the city moving forward, right? Are you going to have barricades on sidewalks now in the French Quarter?
You know, to me, this reminds me of 9/11, and the way we lived and the way we moved changed on a dime after the 9/11 terror attack. And I expect this to be the same sort of thing that you're going to see here in the city of New Orleans and probably in a lot of other cities. We've had a number of conversations about making the French Quarter 100% pedestrian. You know, there's technology in place that we are going to have to bring to bear to maintain public safety in order and protect ourselves from terrorist attacks. The city of New Orleans hosts huge events year in and year out, not just on New Year's Eve. We're a small city that hosts more large events than any other city in this country. And we're a soft target. The Rose Bowl has a SEER rating, and we just recently got a SEER rating to invoke national sort of protections for Mardi Gras. And I believe we're going to have to start having some conversations about having that SEER designation throughout other larger events. And we're going to need to change a lot of our behaviors, a lot of the things that we have taken for granted, whether it is surveillance, whether it is cameras, whether it is bollards across sidewalks and streets to keep people safe. And we should.
District Attorney Williams, you know, the Sugar Bowl was supposed to be tonight. So many tourists have flown into New Orleans for it. It's a major annual tradition for the city, for college football. Postponed 24 hours to tomorrow. What are the security plans for tomorrow now?
So, I mean, that's happening right now, and it will continue to happen. It's one of the reasons why Sugar Bowl leaders and city leaders made the decision to postpone the game 24 hours. To put other measures in place with regards to parking in the Superdome, which in regards to ingress and egress out of the area, with regards to how and what will happen with the hotels that are close to Bourbon Street and in the French Quarter. So all that is happening now. Those folks are meeting between now and tomorrow to find new solutions to some things that were not on the table prior to the Sugar Bowl, but the changes that you'll see will not just be changes for just the Sugar Bowl and just for Super Bowl, but for the city of New Orleans going forward.
And just lastly, can I ask what your message would be? Twofold. What would be your message to tourists who are in New Orleans right now, who might be unsure if they should stay? And what's your message to the people of Orleans Parish?
You know, this is a terrorist attack. And there are certain things you can be prepared for and certain things you cannot be prepared for. When someone wants to wreak havoc and cause carnage, we need to hope and know that we have law enforcement in place to respond and react in kind. And that is exactly what happened. I can't thank the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department who responded very quickly to neutralize this threat as fast as they did. To seek out those IEDs as fast as they did and neutralize those as well. But there's a strategy in place. It is a federal, state, and local strategy. It is being deployed. But I hope that anyone visiting, and I hope that locals alike, understand that we need their help. We need their cooperation. There will be more ask of them coming forward. But we also need them to listen to law enforcement, listen to first responders.
When you can make anything possible because you have a reliable connection that puts everything within reach, that's Life Unlimited. That's Spectrum.
In the hospital and just can't return a phone call. And I hope that they will be very circumspect about what they post online and use as much humanity as they can.
I appreciate that note, sir. Thank you. Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, really appreciate your time. We want to turn now to another breaking news story, and I'm going to caution you. We are following this developing story. We want to be clear that we do not know anything that ties what I'm about to say, that story, to what we've been talking about in New Orleans. This is just a separate story that we're learning about. Authorities are investigating a vehicle fire outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas that left one person dead, injured several others. We believe the vehicle in question is a Cybertruck. At a press conference this afternoon, authorities did not have any information on the cause of that fire. They said they have many unanswered questions. Here's some of what they said moments ago.
I know you're looking for a lot of answers, and ideally right now we just don't have a lot of answers. We're going to continue to work as hard as we can over the next 24 to 48 hours to hopefully get more to you. But this time we've got a lot of questions and deploying resources, and we will continue to do that until we get to the end of this and figure out exactly what happened and why. Thank you.
Again, that from a press conference that happened just moments ago. We accidentally showed something related to New Orleans as that man was talking. Those two things are unrelated as far as we know. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa is following this story and joins me now. So, Emily, we played that soundbite. What else do we know at this point about what happened in Las Vegas?
So I'll start with just kind of underscoring the outstanding questions at this point. There are still so many unknowns around the circumstances of the vehicle fire, including was this mechanical, accidental, intentional? Authorities would not weigh in on that. But we know that fire and police in Las Vegas responded to the valet section just outside, as you can see on your screen, of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. That's on the northern end of the Las Vegas Strip, to a vehicle fire. The fire has since been put out, but they are encouraging people to avoid the area. We learned from authorities moments ago that 7 people sustained minor injuries, some transported to the hospital, and 1 person who had been in that cyber truck, they did die. Now, looking at various videos posted to social media, you can see smoke billowing into the sky from a distance away. You can see the flames on your screen right there as well. Some people on social media describing hearing loud sounds and types of explosions, but we're still waiting for more information, and authorities say they expect to be able to share more information in the coming hours. It appears that it was, again, seeing on your screen, a cyber truck. That is one of the newer vehicles from Tesla, Elon Musk's company. We know Elon Musk does have a position in the incoming administration under Donald Trump in his presidential administration, Kate.
All right, and Emily, what have we heard? Have we heard anything from the Trump organization since that was outside a Trump hotel?
So the Trump organization, as well as Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, posting to social media saying they acknowledge the electric vehicle fire, also writing in part, the safety and well-being of our guests and staff remain our top priority. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Las Vegas Fire Department and local law enforcement. The FBI is now also involved with this. Also, the governor acknowledging that they are monitoring the situation as well, but still a rapidly developing situation, Kate, with so many unanswered questions. But you can understand the concern given the timing and the location of this.
All right, Emily Aketa, following that developing story, that breaking news on a very, very busy New Year's Day news day. Emily, thank you. It is just before the bottom of the hour right now. I'm Kate Snow with you. We continue our coverage of the breaking news out of New Orleans now. Officials say at least 10 people have been killed after a pickup truck drove through the popular tourist destination Bourbon Street. The FBI is investigating it as an act of terrorism. Here's what we know from a press conference that happened just a short time ago. The attack unfolded about 3 hours into the new year. People were still out celebrating on Bourbon Street. Authorities say the suspect intentionally drove around barricades and onto a sidewalk and rammed a white pickup truck down Bourbon Street, hitting people. Police say that then he crashed the truck and started shooting a gun at officers who returned fire, killing the suspect. Tourists and New Orleans locals are still processing what happened.
I'm waking up to it, and I'm in shock.
Even last night, which I was there was still like at midnight, 1 in the morning, there's still cars driving by, even though there's people walking all over the street. You got to dodge cars. So I don't think they should let any vehicles at all. It should always be blocked off.
I woke up this morning to texts from a bunch of people asking if I was okay. And of course, we turn on the news and see, 2 blocks from our hotel, there was a terrorist attack, which was just kind of bewildering to wake up to.
President Biden called this a, quote, horrific incident. He said he's working to make sure there's no remaining threat. Joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian. Yasmin, you've been really monitoring reaction, reaction online. What are you seeing?
Well, it's kind of taking us through a TikTok and showing us really what happened leading up to the ramming of that pickup truck into those individuals on Bourbon Street at 3:15 early this morning, Kate. And there is this video that we're actually trying to get cleared right now by WDSU showing essentially this pickup truck driving down the street. And we heard in the press conference that you've been talking about this vehicle kind of driving around a police vehicle that had barricaded, I believe it was Canal Street, and then driving onto the sidewalk, hitting individuals on the sidewalk, and then progressing down that street until it crashed into that structure you see right here, that orange structure that you see right here. And then all of this footage pouring in through social media that we have been playing over and over again, the moments essentially after this vehicle rammed into these individuals, killing 10 plus people now, 30 plus at this point, who have in fact remained injured in the hospital. Here, this audio that we're hearing right now, you're seeing an individual who essentially was filming outside on Bourbon Street after this vehicle had rammed into this orange structure, and then gunshots ringing out. We now have confirmation, obviously, that there was exchange of gunfire between police and the suspect, and you see this individual holding his likely iPhone or phone as he's filming this scene outside of this cafe or this establishment, running into the establishment for safety. It kind of really shows the melee, the chaos that took place on Bourbon Street overnight, as 10+ people now have been confirmed dead and 30+ now remaining hospitalized and being treated for their extensive injuries in the hospital. I mean, the amount of police presence now, Kate, ahead of what would have been the Sugar Bowl this evening, now confirmed to have been delayed for 24 hours, is astounding, but not surprising considering the extent to which this has caused havoc, chaos, and carnage in the streets of New Orleans this New Year's Day, Kate.
Yeah, Yasmin, that video clip, and I don't want to show it again because I think we've seen it enough, but that last one that you were showing us and narrating through where the person taking the video is ducking for cover.
I mean, imagine.
We had not seen that. I don't think I've seen that on air in the last 3 hours. So.
Imagine being that individual, having just experienced and seen what took place on Bourbon Street, being out there celebrating New Year's, and then hearing the gunshots and running for your life.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And I know we're also collecting a lot of eyewitness accounts at this point. They've been pouring in from all parts of New Orleans. What's the theme? What are people saying?
You know, it's interesting, Kate, because you and I have covered a lot of these, sadly, type of terrorist attacks in this country and overseas as well. And I think a lot of folks that experience these types of things, they go into a state of shock, not necessarily believing that they are hearing what they are actually hearing. We heard from one individual that I want to play for you in a moment, who says, her name was April McGee, she talks about how she believed this was fireworks, and it turns out, in fact, it was not fireworks. Let's take a listen to what she had to say, and then we'll talk on the other side.
I saw lots of fireworks, and then I laid down, and I was watching them from my bed, and I heard maybe they were going off for quite some time. They didn't stop at midnight, so I thought maybe it was like the final, whatever you call it, the grand finale. It was just loud, something really loud. And then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks.
You know, it's shock, Kate, right? It's sadness that we're hearing from a lot of folks. But I think that oftentimes when you experience something like this, and the experiences that I've been having and interviewing folks that have experienced and lived through moments like this, it is the days, it is the weeks after that they finally grapple with what they survived and what they have lived through. And then we obviously cannot even imagine what the families are dealing with right now, learning about the loss of their loved ones on this New Year's Day.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. You know, we learned in the press conference that from the Attorney General of the state of Louisiana, some people are fighting for their lives as we speak right now. They're still in the hospital in critical condition. Yasmin Vasugian, really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Let me turn once again to NBC News law enforcement intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, who covers these kinds of disasters for us and has been on this for hours and hours now. Tom, I know we have some new information that kind of came from the press conference. Where do you want to, I don't even know where you want to start. Do you want to talk about the pickup truck and what we've learned about that?
Sure, Kate, we can talk about that for certain. I think the big focus right now are these other potential improvised explosive devices. These are the type of explosives that are made at home. They're the type of devices that you might use or put together as a terrorist to avoid law enforcement detection, because you might use common household items. They might be the only items that are available to you. A great example, although as much of a tragedy as it is, but it's a great example for purposes of our discussion, is the Boston Marathon pressure cooker bombs. Those are improvised explosive devices. They're made at home. They're put together at home. And so the device type here, I'm not exactly sure what those are. Still trying to get some more information. It's been moving, and whether or not they could have actually exploded is a bit of a question as well. But the indication are that several had been planted near this incident. Obviously, if you have this individual driving at a high rate of speed, we've seen the video, and then engaging in a gunfire with law enforcement, they don't have time to position potential explosive devices. So who planted those, I think, is going to be a big question, if not this suspect. And so that might be a reason why that they're focusing on that. And we understand, or our understanding of it from our reporting and multiple senior law enforcement officials, we reported, and now the FBI has confirmed that there's at least 2 devices that they're looking at, outside of a device, by the way, that they found in the vehicle that they're looking into as well. So all of this is a bit of a question at this point as to the involvement of other individuals, but clearly the FBI believes they don't think that he acted alone. So that's the focus right now. As far as that truck, I think they've pretty well figured out that truck was rented from somebody, an individual who may have no ties at all to anything that happened today, on a car service. It's kind of like an Airbnb. If I owned a vehicle, I could put it out there and say, oh, I'm traveling out of town for several weeks. If you want to borrow my car, this is the one, and I get a payment in return for that. This vehicle appears to be associated with that service, so that at this point it doesn't appear that somebody took this or provided it to another individual, at least willingly, for this attack. But we're going to continue to dig into that and several other issues as well.
And Tom, you and other correspondents just obtained a picture, and we want to show it. It's a picture of the suspect. What do we know about this man?
Yeah, so we know that this is a 42-year-old individual. You're looking at him right here, as Shamsu Din Jabbar, 42 years old, born in the United States, has ties to the Houston area, former U.S. Army veteran, according to officials at the press conference. He was honorably discharged from the Army, has a very limited criminal history, misdemeanor, traffic, that type of thing, so nothing as far as violent crime in the past. His past travel is certainly something that is being looked into. Did he travel to any countries that might be concerned to U.S. officials? Did he travel with anybody else? That's something that they're poring over now. Hope to have new reporting on that soon. So that's what we know about this person. But that photo from myself and good friend and colleague Jonathan Dienst, we're reporting on this together. That photo appears to be the individual that is responsible for what is becoming just such a horrific terrorist attack that you've been talking about all day in New Orleans, Kate.
Yeah. Tom, we talk about the suspect. I very much want to talk about those who've lost their lives here, those who are still injured. I'm looking at a statement from St. Thomas More Catholic High School mourning the loss of one of their own. This is just one of the individuals that we've finally learned the name of. Tiger Beck is his name. Can you tell us any more about those who were lost? I know we don't have many details yet, and how badly injured some folks are, because at the press conference they said some are hanging on, for their lives.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been described to us. I won't get into too much of the injuries that I've seen. I'm also just as concerned about the individuals who saw this, who fled from it, what they experienced. That those images will never leave their minds, and it's going to impact this community. And certainly, given the fact that people come to New Orleans from all over the country to celebrate New Year's, we had planned for tonight a huge football game, the Sugar Bowl, that has now been postponed to tomorrow. Do these people come from other communities? Each time this happens, it tears away a little bit at the fabric of what people know in their lives. And so that's the reason why you see law enforcement focus so much on preventing these types of incidents from occurring and making sure that those that may have been involved are handcuffed and eventually charged and taken through trial. But it is something that really impacts people, and is our focus right now. Is there anybody else who's out there? Are there any other concerns based on what the FBI has said publicly? But obviously there's always a concern long-term for the families and loved ones and the people that witnessed it, even if they weren't injured. I can tell you from talking to people that have experienced these terrorist attacks over the years, from hearing them testify at the Boston Marathon bombing trial, the long-term emotional and psychological impacts of this are very real. They are very impactful, and it's something that you can go a day, couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months and be totally okay, and then you hear something, see something that triggers that memory again, and it can be very difficult for those people, and something that as we go through this we should all keep in mind.
I'm so glad you said that, Tom. It really is important to remember how deeply impacting something like this can be on an entire community, on all of us, frankly, even those of us just watching at home and hearing about this. Tom Winter, thank you. Well, as federal law enforcement investigates the New Orleans attack, President Biden is offering his condolences to the victims and to the families. He told reporters earlier today he's being continually briefed, but he was not offering any new details about the investigation, didn't want to answer questions about that. This was hours ago, the video you're seeing here. NBC News White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is in West Palm Beach, Florida, near Mar-a-Lago, where the president-elect is. We heard from President Biden earlier today. Are we expecting more of a formal statement from the Biden White House this afternoon?
Well, Kate, that's a very good question. And at this point, the White House has not confirmed whether President Biden might speak again, might go before cameras. Right now, he is at Camp David after traveling there from Wilmington, Delaware this morning, where he rung in the new year, attending a private wedding ceremony last night. But Kate, as you said, he did not offer many specifics because that's something that the White House really doesn't try to wade into the local, state, and federal investigation before federal authorities have an ability to speak at that press conference. Now, you notice the FBI very careful in what details it did release. So we suspect that the White House is also taking that into consideration when deciding whether the president might speak once again. President Biden, however, we know from White House officials, has spoken with New Orleans mayor. He's offered and pledged the full federal support. He's also extended condolences to the victims' families as well. And throughout the day, as you said, he's been briefed by top officials at the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Someone else that we've heard from today is President-elect Trump. He did release a statement earlier today on his social media platform. He praised the New Orleans Police Department, also extended his condolences to the victims, and he called this an act of, quote, pure evil. Again, that's what we've heard from President-elect Trump. We do not yet know if we will hear more from him later on today. He rung in the new year here in South Florida at his Mar-a-Lago estate. But again, Kate and Morgan, what we are waiting to hear from the White House, whether President Biden might speak again later today as he takes in all of this fluid information at Camp David.
Gabe, thank you. And you've got just Kate at this point. I want to ask you about this other incident that we reported just a short time ago. Separate incident in Las Vegas. A vehicle outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas caught fire. One person was killed. 7 others were hurt. Has there been any response either from the White House or from the Trump transition team?
No response yet from the White House, Kate, but we have gotten our first statement from a member of Donald Trump's family, Eric Trump, just posting a statement on social media a short time ago. Not much information here, but what he did say is that earlier today, a reported electric vehicle fire occurred near Trump Las Vegas. The safety and well-being of our guests and staff remain our top priority, and we extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Las Vegas Fire Department and local law enforcement for their swift response and professionalism. Again, that's the first time we've heard from a member of the Trump family regarding that vehicle fire in Las Vegas. Still another situation where we're awaiting more information from local authorities that are investigating that there. Kate.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. In just the past hour, the FBI and local officials in New Orleans updated us on the attack on Bourbon Street. They talked about security concerns, especially ahead of the Sugar Bowl, which has now been postponed in the wake of today's attack. It will be tomorrow night now. Here's more of what they told reporters.
First, I want to acknowledge the victims of today's horrific attack. The FBI and our partners are working diligently to investigate and find answers on behalf of the victims, the citizens and residents of Louisiana, and everyone visiting the city.
My priority will continue to be to ensure that victims that remain on Bourbon Street now will be serviced and removed as soon as possible, but as stated, the FBI is in charge of this investigation and are doing everything necessary to make this happen. I also want to acknowledge hearing from President Biden, all of our federal partners, but most importantly, calling Governor Landry this morning, responded with haste, and we do say thank you. And of course, a demonstration of a unified support is right here in this room. That's how we collectively responded to this tragedy in the city of New Orleans. The mission now is to facilitate, support, and coordinate safety procedures to keep our residents and our visitors safe.
We have been in consultation with ESPN, with the college football playoff, with the Southeastern Conference, with the University of Georgia, with Notre Dame, all parties, and all agree that it's in the best interest of everybody and public safety that we postpone the game for 24 hours.
This is all hands on deck, from the White House all the way down. I've been in communication with the White House since early this morning, Secretary Mayorkas, leaders in all of our federal, local, and state agencies. The President has made it very clear that he intends to bring every resource to bear to not only tell the truth, but to provide the resources to bring these cowards to justice. If you saw something, say something. If you know something, tell someone. There are tip lines, there's information available. Please, all hands on deck.
You know, you've heard some of the details today, and over the last 24 hours, we had approximately 400 officers in the French Quarter. And as we know, this is not just an act of terrorism. This is evil. And when we face evil, we have a choice. We can run in fear, or we can indeed stand in strength.
I'll be here to help. I will be here to stand with the city of New Orleans. We will bring them to justice.
They mentioned a tip line there. I just want to quickly say 800-CALL-FBI is the tip line. Let's bring in Carmen Best, NBC News law enforcement analyst, retired Seattle police chief. Carmen, the FBI believes the suspect did not act alone. We heard that loud and clear. Based on your experience, what are the biggest challenges finding other suspects?
Well, Kate, we don't know all the evidence that they have at this juncture. As you know, they're trying to protect the investigation, but clearly they're going to be trying to ascertain who else might have been involved with planning potential improvised explosive devices, with any of the planning of the event that occurred, and what other associates may be involved. It will be a multi-pronged, multidisciplinary look, leaving no stone unturned to figure out who was involved. It was a bit of shocking information, but certainly worth noting that they believe other people were involved in this tragic and horrific event. It made sense that they are not going to go forward with the Sugar Bowl for at least 24 hours. I would surmise, based on my own experience being a retired police chief and having been involved in law enforcement for almost 3 decades, that until they are sure about the whereabouts or the involvement of others, they're not going to risk having such a large event until they can ensure the security of the facility.
That makes sense. Carmen, Bourbon Street, one of the busiest areas in the country all year round, let alone on New Year's Eve. Police at the news conference, they talked about the fact that the suspect drove around a police car that was blocking Bourbon Street and onto a sidewalk. There was a lot of talk about what's happening in the city of New Orleans right now because of the Super Bowl in February. They were actually trying to replace these things called bollards, right, which are, as I understand it, like steel pillars that come up out of the ground, and they can be retracted back down, but they're there to block traffic. Those were not in place. Those were not up because they're under repair right now. They're replacing them, and they were trying to do that in time for the Super Bowl. It struck all of us, though, and Jesse Kirsch mentioned this earlier, it struck us that it might seem strange that they wouldn't block the sidewalk also. So even if they didn't have bollards in place, why did they not have security in front of the sidewalk?
Well, as you mentioned, Kate, I mean, I can't answer for the agency. I think some things that they would consider would be the level of traffic, trying to allow people to both experience the celebration, but have enough resources available to respond and act quickly. I mean, there'll be a lot of debriefing to figure out whether that was the best plan or not, or the best plan of action. I will say this, that the officers that were there, as Superintendent Kirkpatrick mentioned, well over 400, that the 3 officers involved took out the suspect immediately and engaging in gunfire. So, there was a lot of protection around. Obviously, this would be one aspect that they'll be taking a look at.
Understood, and agree that the actions of those officers commendable. We also learned in the press conference that the 2 who were shot and had to go to the hospital will be fine, so that's great news. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Carmen. Let's bring in NBC News Justice correspondent now, Ken Delaney. Ken, I'm checking back in with you. I can't remember when I talked to you last, maybe a half hour ago. Do we have any new information building on what we heard at the press conference about suspects that they may be looking for still?
We do, Kate, but it's pretty limited. What I can tell you is that investigators are examining videos, investigating the possibility that other people, not this subject who died in the vehicle, that other people planted the 2 bombs that they found, the 2 IEDs in the city of New Orleans. Now, the information we're getting on this is conflicting and hazy, and so we're being very cautious and careful. So that's what we're going to say, is that they're looking into this question of whether they have video showing that other people planted the bombs. That would be one reason they would believe that there were co-conspirators, but they may not know the identities of these people, and so that's maybe why they were so circumspect at that news conference, saying many times, as you recall, there are other people out there, we're looking for bad people, but not saying anything about who those people might be or what their characteristics are or what they know about them. They may not know very much, but that's one of the factors we're told that's going into this. And look, stepping back, this is one of the most significant, if not the most significant, Islamic-inspired terrorist attacks, if in fact that's what it was, given the ISIS flag, since 9/11 in years. I mean, going back to San Bernardino, and it's certainly more complex than many of the attacks that we've seen. And I can't recall a situation where you had a vehicle attack and then co-conspirators allegedly at large. And now we've got this really major event, this football game that's been postponed. So this is just turning out to be an enormous counterterrorism situation, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, there was a period a few years ago where officials were saying, look, the threat from Islamic-inspired terrorism is really diminished. We're much more concerned now about right-wing or domestic terrorism. And in fact, most of the quote-unquote terrorist attacks, mass casualty, ideological attacks that we've seen in recent years were not this. We're not ISIS-inspired. But so it's a really disturbing turn of events here that we've got this situation where somebody, an American-born person, carried this attack out, perhaps with help from others, flying an ISIS flag, Kate.
Can I just go back 1 second, Ken, and make sure that we're completely understanding what your reporting is about the other IEDs? So you're saying there was one IED, well, Tom Winter has been reporting, one IED was found, improvised explosive device, inside the truck itself. There are 2 others that were mentioned at the press conference found in other areas, and it's your understanding that they may have video that shows that there were other people involved? Do I have that right?
That's correct. They're examining whether the video in their possession shows other people planting these bombs. Again, not confirmed that they've concluded that, but that's part of their investigation.
Okay. And Ken, we know that 10 people at least have been killed. We had a different number last hour, and at the press conference they said 10 is all we can say for now, but there are others that are in not good condition at this point. What more do we know about those injured and those killed?
Yeah, in fact, Tom Winter reported from a senior law enforcement official that the death toll is actually 15. So because a lot of people were taken to hospital with grievous injuries and didn't make it. Frankly, Kate, I've been reporting on the investigation all day. I haven't seen any information about the victims. And I think you pointed out earlier, we should be talking about the victims. That should be the focus. And as we learn more about them, we will talk about the victims, because this is an absolutely horrific incident that should not happen anywhere, let alone among people celebrating rioting and in the United States of America, in the great city of New Orleans. It's just an awful, awful tragedy. And sometimes we get caught up in the machinations of the latest investigative lead, and it's important to reflect on the people that lost their lives here and who are affected and injured, and the families. I mean, it's unimaginable the pain that this individual or individuals have caused here, Kate.
And we just have about 30 seconds, Ken, before we hit the top of the hour. What are you taking away from those you're talking to that is like next steps? What are their next steps in the investigation?
Well, the most important thing, obviously, Kate, is they need to figure out, if they haven't already, exactly who these co-conspirators are, what their roles were, and they need to catch them. As they said at that news conference, they're going after some bad people. They need to run those people down. That's the reason the Sugar Bowl was postponed, is because they don't have a complete handle on this conspiracy. That's what they're telling us, and that's the most important next step here. And nobody's going to rest easy among law enforcement until this thing is completely wrapped up and they know exactly what happened here, Kate.
All right, Ken Delanian, really appreciate you being with us through all of this. We'll let you go do some more reporting and have you back once again. Ken, thank you so much. A couple who witnessed the attack described the horrific scene to our NBC affiliate WDSU in New Orleans. We want to play a little bit of that interview now.
We were coming through the intersection, and it all just happened so quickly. But the guy in the pickup truck just punched the gas and mowed over the barricade and hit a pedicab passengers.
There were multiple cops on the corner.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos and very, very scary.
When you saw the car, did you think anything of it at first, or did you?
No, no, it was the most bizarre thing, like something that the least expected thing, I don't even know how he managed to maneuver that with the amount of traffic and people that were still out.
Bumper to bumper. There were people everywhere.
You said there was a lot of people?
Tons of people.
Tons of people. And cops everywhere.
The cops were on the corner when it ran through the barricade. They were standing right there when it happened.
And when you're talking about barricade, are you talking about like those like the metal poles right there?
Yep.
So did you see at all any of the ballards or anything like that pop up?
It was just like debris and everything, and then people. It was unreal. Just total chaos. Total chaos.
What was it? The sounds?
A huge impact. It almost sounded like a gunshot. I actually looked, and maybe we did hear that too, knowing now that the guy had ended up shooting those two police officers. But I remember the screeching and him gunning the car and the impact and the screams. Like I said, the screams of those girls. Yeah, I don't know that I'll be able to forget that.
I'm so sorry you guys had to go through that. You had mentioned inside that when he barricaded through, it was super loud.
Yeah, it was. It was very, very loud. It just was this huge boom.
Crunching
and crunch. Yeah. And then just the people yelling.
And you guys had just walked right across the street. Where were you guys at?
We had come from about 2 blocks down from a parking garage, the Roosevelt parking garage, and we're coming through this intersection right here on Bourbon when it happened.
From what I recall, he was in this lane and just took a hard right and punched it, is what it seemed to be like. So I don't know how he did it, because there were all the cars. It was literally 3 or 4. It's 3 lane, but there was also people parked over on the side. So, it was just hectic and chaotic. I don't know how he was able to get through the barricade or whatever, get enough speed.
There is multiple pedicab drivers and carts there. And fortunately, one of the girls that he hit her cart she didn't have passengers, but it was the other gentleman who had passengers. That's what he hit, and they were just all on the ground. I
was just to say, so you guys saw this happen. What did you guys do next?
It was kind of like a surreal moment, and my husband, he just grabbed me and he was like, let's go, let's go, get out, let's get out of here. It was so surreal, I think we did kind of go into that fight or flight mode and chose flight in that instance, to get ourselves out of here and safe.
They're hearing from one of the eyewitnesses that saw everything unfold at just around 3 a.m. this morning, local time in New Orleans. Those stories that we're hearing from eyewitnesses are just absolutely devastating. Again, we know at this hour at least 10 people killed, 30+ people injured. I want to thank you for being with us for this NBC News special report. For those of you watching on the NBC network, we're going to return you to your regular programming. You can find our special report streaming on NBC News Now.